abundant that makes everything green this year. And also where neighbors still know each other and respect one another despite their differences. We pray that we would appreciate these blessings more and more every day, our clean water, our natural environment, and that we would be good stewards of our natural environment and also those personal relationships that we value so much. We pray for that in our meeting today, and also in our everyday lives as we continue through the week. So thank you for this opportunity to serve our neighbors and our community, and we ask that your wisdom be with us as we go about our business tonight. Amen. Denise, please call the roll.
Councilmember Shaw. Here. Gulick. Here. Neese.
Excused. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Neese is with us online.
Okay. Owen.
Councilmember Owen is on her way, but not with us yet. When she arrives, I'll try to designate that on the record.
Okay. Joy.
Here.
Chiriki.
I am here.
Fidswell.
Here.
Purinton.
Here.
Boyette. Rapsis.
Here.
Mayor Cole.
Here. Council, we do not have any minutes for us this evening. We'll get to those at our next business meeting. Do we have any council courtesies this evening? Councilmember Purinton.
Thank you. I think we failed to mention this before, but several of us went to the swearing in of District Court Judge Tom Party. He used to be here with the city, worked for Gina. Guess you're looking for another attorney. But anyway, it was a wonderful swearing in. Family and friends were there. The courtroom was full, and it was just an amazing event. So glad to have him on board.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you to everyone who attended, and congratulations to Tom. Well earned. Any other courtesies this evening? I'll just mention on the council or the administrative report, we'll get an update on the recent rail derailment and also the declaration of emergency that we approved on Friday. So stay tuned for that. Any other courtesies, though? Don't see any. So we do not have any proclamations this evening. Any council reports? Don't see any of those, so we'll move on to our city administrator reports. And Chris, per our conversation earlier, I would ask that you tell us more about the rail derailment over the weekend and also the declaration of emergency and disaster that was signed on Friday.
Yes, we'll cover both of those. A couple other quick items. No ex parte communication is there for you from after 3 this afternoon. A reminder that with Independence Day on a Tuesday next week, we're not meeting on Monday, July 3rd. Rather, we have a scheduled work session for the last Monday in July, since we have 5 Mondays in July. And so more to come there, but we're not meeting here next week. The other 2 items, let me first cover the derailment in the news there. So a big thank you to Debbie Melling, her crews, and the team. And this has, I think, thankfully it will have a bigger effect, not on our drinking water. That is safe and fine, but I worry midterm our economy, right? We're a rail town, and I've never seen the rail yard as empty as it is. That rail line, that bridge, is incredibly important to this community and to services running across the country. So after being informed of the potential for hazardous materials entering the Yellowstone River upstream from the city's water plant, city staff prepared a plan to ensure that water that was provided to the community was safe. Monitoring of the Yellowstone River occurred throughout the day and night. And no contamination were detected. And in fact, I saw a notice from the EPA today, again, that there's no level of detection according to their standards. Out of an abundance of caution, the city did decide to shut off its intake from the river for about a 12-hour period Saturday. We have modeling that's able to show us when would a plume, if there were a plume, coming down the river. And again, consistent with that EPA release today, I think the EPA estimated 10 hours to get from the bridge site to Columbus. So we're further upstream than that. But we did turn off our intake thanks to the fact that we had all of our reservoirs full. The fact that we've got all but 2 inches of our annual rainfall or moisture means people aren't watering their lawns quite so much. And so with reservoirs full, we were able to turn that intake off for 12 hours and not risk water supply, having capacity. So as of Sunday morning, the plant was back fully operating normally. We will continue to test, as is the EPA and the DEQ, but there is believed to be no risk to water quality. And of course, that's our intake. Anything that we take in goes through the water plant, the filtration system, before it goes into our water system. So that's the update there. And then I'm actually going to have Casey, he's with us. I'm going to have him cover the gist of a emergency declaration that we took. We asked the mayor to sign it on Friday, just in case we can tap into some federal resources for the flooding that happened over the Memorial Day weekend, and that continues, was potentially continuing this weekend. So Casey, if you could cover that, and you have the emergency declaration in front of you, and it just provides an opportunity for us. Nothing in it is a mandate for us. So Casey.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Kotulski, Mayor, Council. I asked the city of Billings to go ahead and declare a state of emergency retroactive back to May the 31st of this year in response to the ongoing flooding that has occurred from May 31st even up until today. The state DES office, in working with the governor, declared that they're going to try to declare a state of emergency for that length of period of time. And I was told that our expiration date to get this emergency declaration in could occur before Monday. And we were told that. We had been thinking about it, but I didn't know what the governor was going to do, right? So we went ahead and did that. When we declare a state of emergency for the city or the county, there's no, all we're doing is we're saying we have exceeded our normal capacity to take care of whatever this issue is. We have an obligation to our community to take care of things and doing emergency repair work, and Debbie in Public Works for the city of Billings always does a fantastic job with that. When we declare a state of emergency, it really doesn't do anything for us at all unless the state declares a state of emergency as well. If the state declares, then that makes us eligible for state assistance above our 2 mil levy threshold. And for the city of Billings, that's $442,014. Now, if we accept state assistance, then the city is obligated to impose the 2 mil emergency levy to recuperate the $440,000+ for the city, and then the state would pitch in and help for whatever we have on top of that. However, if the governor is successful in getting this particular disaster declared on a federal level, so that it becomes a presidential declaration, the city of Billings then would be eligible for federal funding and some of the state funding. Without imposing the 2 mil levy, we just have to have spent the 2 mil levy. And according to our Public Works Department, we have well exceeded the $442,000 or $42,000 that we did. So as of this moment, those declarations have not been completed, but the emergency declaration that we did for the city makes us eligible to participate in that should the president decide to go ahead and make this a federal declaration. For the president to do that, one of the stipulations is combined for the region, for the state, we have to exceed $1,919,078. And between all of the communities that have declared disasters over this flooding period, we have exceeded that. But again, the governor will ask for it, and then it's up to the president of the United States to declare whether or not we're going to do it. I think we've exceeded those thresholds, but all of that is to come. As far as immediate, it doesn't really do anything for us except make us eligible if those triggers happen. Are there any questions on that?
Questions, Councilmember Rupsis?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Casey. Does this do anything or have the potential to do anything for our, residents who have had personal property damage, basements flooded that have to be rebuilt or anything like that?
That's an excellent question. So, all of the declarations that we're talking about are for public assistance. Public assistance does not mean individual people like myself or you. It means public infrastructure and government-owned assistance. If the president declares a federal disaster, he can also declare a federal disaster and include individual assistance with that. So if that occurs, then there will be some federal assistance available to homeowners that qualify for the assistance. And then that qualification has a list of things about the damage and how it was handled and things like that. I would remind all of us, the citizens of Yellowstone County and Billings, that FEMA assistance for any disaster is enough money. It is designed to offset the cost of being displaced from your primary residence. It doesn't cover your property or anything like that. And so the average amount that people get from FEMA is really about $3,500 to $7,000 on average, somewhere in there. So it's not a replacement. It helps with your cost. There are other non-governmental organizations like the Red Cross and the Montana State VOAD and 211 that can offer some assistance to people if they qualify. So I would encourage anybody who's looking for that, and I have been, to call 211 or the Red Cross for that type of stuff. Unfortunately, there's just not a lot out there for individuals.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Casey? Don't see any. Thank you, Casey, and thank you for your efforts over this weekend. We know you had a eventful weekend.
Yes, are there any questions on the train wreck?
When's the next one?
When's the next one? Yes. I do want to compliment the Debbie and the Public Works and the water treatment facility people. We have a source water protection plan that covers the entire county, and when they were notified, they did an excellent job of doing everything that they need to do. So wherever Debbie is, if she's in here, she did a great job as always. So thank you to her.
Thank you. And Casey, just a comment, not just to you, but your staff and Marie. And also, I think it's worth noting that this just further underscores why this body and staff have recommended and moved forward with the construction of the West End Reservoir, despite its price tag of about $140 million. The fact that we've had two events that have threatened our only source of supply for water in the last year, in the earlier flood event and then this, is pretty remarkable, but it does underline the wisdom of that move, in my opinion. Councilmember Trickey?
Could you tell us just a little bit about what was actually on the train and what went into the water?
So what spilled into the water was hot asphalt and molten sulfur. Both of those chemicals, I guess, if you will, are not soluble in water, and they're transported extremely hot in a liquid or semi-liquid form, and when they touch the cold water, they solidified. So the hazardous material plume, we didn't really have one that went downstream like you would if you had oil or gasoline or diesel. The other cars that were involved, I gotta read it so I get it right, was sodium hydrosulfide. And sodium hydrosulfide is a 4.1 class hazmat material that was involved in the derailment, but it didn't breach. It was damaged, but it didn't breach. So I think overall we were very lucky that we had the only substance that went into our river solidified, and it's pretty much staying there. There was some small amounts of asphalt that were picked up by PAR refinery. I'm used to calling it Exxon. They were very small, and the DEA and the DEQ took those samples and tested them, but we haven't had any water contamination. Those were solid particles that just got carried down the stream.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Anything else for Casey? Doesn't look like it. Again, thank you, Casey. And just for the record, Councilmember Irwin has joined us. Chris, anything else on your city administrator report?
So I will add a couple pieces. Our primary cost on the flooding, if you're curious, is Gable Road. So we are experiencing, several hundred thousand, maybe at this point, we think we'll be north of $750,000 on the Gable Road repair. And then let's end on some positive notes. So yesterday, right, a very a positive event at Pioneer Park, Symphony in the Park. Probably were questions with 6 inches of rain in June, which we never get, if that was going to be pulled off, but it was a fantastic event. And speaking of parks, on July the 6th, that's Thursday, July 6th at 10 a.m. at Castle Rock Park, we'll be doing a ribbon cutting for the Destination Playground there. So more details to come. But for those of you who might be listening or watching, mark your calendars for 10 a.m. Thursday, July the 6th. And we're going to have a wonderful time at Castle Rock Park celebrating that ribbon cutting of that Destination Playground. That's it, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you, Chris. We'll move on then with public comment on the non-public hearing item. So what this means is that if we're going to have a public hearing later, please wait until we get to that public hearing item. But there are several things that will not have a public hearing later, and so this is the appropriate time to comment on those things. Those are 3 things. One, first, anything under number 1, our consent agenda, number 1, and there's a copy of the agenda on the back at that card if you don't have one and want it. But the number 1, the consent agenda and all the sub-items. 3A, which is the landfill agreement with Yellowstone County for landfill services. And then item number 5, the resolution on the September primary. But everything else we'll have a public hearing on later, and you can wait to make your comments then. But if you'd like to comment on any of those 3 items, please come to the podium now. Just ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes and tell us your name and address. Is there any public comment on items 1, 3A, or item 5? There is no one online, and there's no one coming to the podium, so we'll close the public comment period on those items and move on to item number 1, our consent agenda. Council, first, are there any items that require a separate vote under number 1?
Oh, no, wait, special presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I had missed that. Thank you for catching that. That would have been a very short presentation on our Family Justice Center Alliance. So, Chris, can you make our introductions here?
Yes, actually, I'm going to hand it over to Katie Nash, who, as you are all well aware, does phenomenal work for this organization and for this community in the area which we wish we didn't have to spend any time or resources on, that being domestic and family violence. But we do. It is a real issue. It is an issue in our community. So Katie's going to do an introduction. We've got a very exciting week this week of data and information gathering, and a really great group of people in town who Katie's going to get you introduced to, so you can see kind of at 100,000 foot where we are and what we're working on.
Welcome, Katie.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, thank you for your time. I am the domestic violence investigator, one of 2 for the Billings Police Department. I know that this council has really recognized that family violence is a problem in this community and that we need to step up and do something about it. And that the idea of developing a family justice center has come up in conversations, which is a big undertaking. So I am lucky to have Ken and Jill with the Family Justice Center Alliance here with me. They are going to be here for the next 2 days to do some community forums and some discipline or provider-specific roundtable discussions. Hopefully you guys can join some of those. Ken is going to give you an overview of what family justice centers are, because it's a big concept. So before I turn this over to him, though, I want to really thank Ellie. Ellie Stanton is the VISTA member assigned to the domestic violence program with the Billings Police Department. Without her hard work over the last many months, we wouldn't be doing this, having this conversation today. The Alliance wouldn't be here for the next 2 days. So thank you very much, Ellie. I appreciate it. And so now I'll hand it over to Ken.
Thank you. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Cole and members of the council. It is a great honor for us to be here this week. My name is Ken Shutter, and I am the National Director of the Family Justice Center Alliance, which is a program of the Alliance for Hope International. I also am president of One Safe Place, which is a crime and violence prevention agency in Fort Worth, Texas, that operates one of the largest family justice centers in the country. And about 11 years ago, I went through this process as a client or constituent of the Alliance. And so I am a big believer in what we are here to do this week. So just very quickly, a family justice center is the bringing together into one location all of the services a victim or survivor of domestic violence and their children need into one place. It doesn't mean that there is one agency that is going to perform all those services. Rather, it is a partnership of agencies. So as an example, in Fort Worth, before there was the One Safe Place Family Justice Center, there were 32 different agencies that were providing services to survivors of domestic violence, and they were spread out all over the county. Now we have 22 partner agencies that are working together in one place. So half of the magic of a family justice center is this bringing together of services into one location. We have talked to thousands of survivors of domestic violence across the country, and we will be talking to survivors while we're here. In fact, it's probably the most important thing that we will do. And one of the questions we always ask is, would you prefer to have your services provided in one place, or would you rather go to a lot of different places? Well, as you can imagine, every survivor has told us, I would rather get my services in one place. And this is not just a matter of convenience, it's actually a matter of life safety. Because domestic violence is not about anger management, it is all about power and control. And one of the ways that abusers exert power and control over their victim is to control their very mobility. So, and the other thing that is true about power and control is that often when a victim decides to leave and makes an effort to leave or to get help, it can be a very dangerous time. Because, in effect, what that survivor is doing is taking control back of her own life back for herself. So that is a time that abusers will step up the level of control in order to take back the power and control. And so that most often, when a survivor or a victim is killed in a domestic violence incident, it is either right after they have left or when they are in the process of trying to leave. So it's important that we get these services in one place. That's half the magic. The other half of the magic is that agencies begin to integrate services and partner with one another. So everywhere in this country, and all over the world really, there's not a great history of the various agencies that serve survivors of domestic violence and their children working closely together. Largely that's because we rightly value privilege and confidentiality in how we serve survivors. But what we have found in the Family Justice Center world is that it is possible for agencies to share information across disciplines. You just have to do it in a manner where you are fully informing the survivor of the benefits and the consequences of sharing that information, and we're only sharing information at the direction of the survivor. So domestic violence, family justice centers are very well evaluated all over this country. And one of the exciting things I can tell you is that they work. In communities where we have built good family justice centers all across this country, the domestic violence homicide rate has dropped dramatically. And there has been a sustained decrease in that domestic violence homicide rate. I can also tell you that we are, through family justice centers, building systems to serve child witnesses. Children who witness domestic violence suffer the same harm long-term as children who are physically abused. They are 6 times more likely to commit suicide. They're far more likely to grow up to be either perpetrators or victims of domestic violence. They're 50% more likely to abuse drugs or alcohol. And they are 1,500% more likely to be physically abused or seriously neglected themselves. Yet we don't have systems in this country to serve child witnesses. Well, we believe in the Family Justice Center world that it's critical not only to serve the adult victims of domestic violence, but also children who are being exposed to violence in the home. And the good news is all those bad outcomes are predictive, they're not determinative. We've learned a lot about how we can reverse the impact of witnessing domestic violence. So we're excited about what we've already learned about this community just in meeting with Katie and Ellie. And the last thing I'll tell you before I take any questions you have is that we've done this all over the country, literally from coast to coast. I have not met two people that are more dedicated and more enthusiastic about this work than Katie and Ellie. So we're excited to be here.
Welcome very much. And is there more before we move? We may have some questions, I'm sure. So we'll have plenty of opportunity. Maybe remind us when our next get-together is. There are plenty of opportunities to meet tomorrow at, I know, 11:30, but you've got meetings throughout the day. And while you're looking for that, do we have some questions or comments? Or Councilmember Bowen, you want to add to this presentation?
No, only welcome to the community. We're thrilled to have you here.
Thank you.
We know you've put in a tremendous amount of prep work to get here. You've given great advice and thought for us to carve this path so far. I think it's, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I'll at least speak for myself. Very hopeful this will be a community-led process, not a council-led process. This is really just the start of a lot of questions. I think that we know there's a proven model that works, and we want to craft the Billings model that makes sense for us. So just could not be more excited that you're here and really looking forward to the collaboration over the next couple of days.
Thank you. And that's really our job, is to make sure it is a community-led effort. It won't be an alliance-led effort. We're just here to facilitate. In fact, if y'all are at meetings, you'll get sick of hearing me say, it depends. The answer to just about every question is it depends on what this community decides it wants to do and what this community decides it wants its Family Justice Center to look like.
So Ken, there's hundreds, sometimes thousands of people who watch this presentation. So you're now famous, but you might want to use that opportunity. I know there are some meetings that are open to the public. Most are not, but some are. And are there any that you'd like to tell anybody who might be watching who is interested when they could come and learn more?
Yeah, so tomorrow we have our community forum that starts at 11:30, and we will include an overview of the Family Justice Center framework at that, and that meeting is certainly public. And this is not the last time we'll be here. We're going to be coming back in September we call this our study tour portion of our process, and then we'll be coming back in September to lead the community in strategic planning and visioning process.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Purington, and then Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you and welcome. I guess my question is, whenever you open, because you said you've done this throughout the country, is it based on the number of cases, victims, or based on size of the community? What are some of your parameters in saying this is a good thing for your community to move forward with?
It's a good question. So every community in America has a domestic violence problem, and Family Justice Centers will work in every community. So we have done this in large urban communities. We've done it in small rural communities. About half of our Family Justice Centers are led by a governmental entity, either a city, a police department, a county department, the prosecutor's office, and about half of the Family Justice Centers are led by a nonprofit community domestic violence or sexual assault agency. So it's really all over the map. So it depends. But I know already from hearing from you all and from working with Ellie and Katie that you have what it takes in this community to build a thriving Family Justice Center. And I should note too, Family Justice Centers are now have generally a larger framework than solely domestic violence. So often they include services for victims of trafficking, often for rape, crisis, or sexual assault, for child abuse. We believe that the Family Justice Center concept works for virtually any kind of victimization or trauma. That doesn't mean we're trying to step on anybody else's toes, or that we want to duplicate work that's already being done, or that we want to force anybody to be part of the Family Justice Center framework. But it does mean that we recommend having a really open mind about who should be part of the Family Justice Center.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you. And welcome. It's great to have you guys here. It's very exciting for our community. Much needed. you may not have an answer to this question right now. I know this is just the beginning, but I'm hoping at some point you can, when you guys come back, maybe we can get some information on funding models. I know you said it depends, it looks different everywhere, but that's the first thing I think of is who funds this generally?
Right. It does depend, but there are some commonalities, right? So, and so one of the people that's going to be joining us tomorrow, she's flying in this evening, but Angela Weeks is a former law enforcement officer and is helping lead the Family Justice Center work in Nampa, Idaho. And in Nampa, they're a city-run family justice center so that the city generally funds it, but they also have a nonprofit foundation that raises money to help support the family justice center as well. But it's always a combination of resources and funds so that it could be a combination of local government resources, federal and state government resources, and nonprofit as well. So and really this Family Justice Center framework or initiative, the national effort, was a creation of the federal government. President George W. Bush had the Presidential Family Justice Center initiative. And so it has been recognized as effectively a best practice by the Department of Justice for decades now. And there are many grants through the Office for Violence Against Women and also the Office for Victims of Crime that support the work of family justice centers.
You're good, thank you. Anything else, Councilmember Trickey?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I know that there's some copies of the pocket guide, the resource guide, that that have just been printed out. So if anybody wants one, Ellie has them, or you have them, or you both have them.
Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, feel free to leave some of those, or we'll get them, I'm sure, at future meetings. Chris?
And Mayor and Council, just to continue on with the information as you asked earlier, Mayor. So tomorrow, that opportunity for the community forum as well as the overview. So community forum 11:30, overview starting at noon, essentially till from 11:30 to about 3:45, all open to the public and all held next door to City Hall at Rock 31. So Rock 31 next door, right under Sky Point, Big Sky Economic Development, that is the location for the community meetings. Other piece I'll add is, it sounds like we're wrapping up, Mayor, is when we had the opportunity to go to Omaha last year, meet the chief of police. Remember, one of the things that he emphasized is, boy, it seemed easy for his perspective if you were only a town of about 175,000 people dealing with this problem than if you wait until you're about 300,000 or 400,000. Point being, just as the communities get bigger, the challenges and the complexities just get further stacked on. So though it, at times, I'll admit, seems daunting for us to be having this conversation as we see some of the facilities around the country, I am convinced absolutely this is the right time. Ideally, only we would have had it earlier. No time is better than now to, I think, get into this discussion as a community. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. We look forward to learning more. If I can just ask you to comment on one thing as you leave, which is my understanding is that many domestic violence complaints result in special challenges for law enforcement. And in particular, those can be some of the most dangerous calls for law enforcement to go on, often very people dealing with a lot of emotion, dangerous situations, and very unpredictable. Can you just comment on that, in particular, if you know of any statistics and the particular risks that domestic violence calls create for our law enforcement?
Yes, I will. So first point I would make is this, and that is that law enforcement is always part of the Family Justice Center partnership. That's one of the requirements of being a Family Justice Center that's affiliated with the National Alliance. So we believe that we have to do this in partnership between law enforcement and social service agencies. And we believe that, we know survivors are more likely to stay engaged, because one of the most frustrating things that happens is you do go on a scene to the most dangerous call you're going to go on. And so often a victim decides not to participate in the prosecution of the case for a lot of reasons, and a lot of them are very good. But when we wrap them in services, and it's not just the police come one time, maybe you get some forms or pamphlets or something, and then you're kind of on your own. But when there is a whole community of people that is wrapping its arms around you, we know that's a much more successful model. The other thing that we focus on a lot in the Family Justice Center is risk to law enforcement in the form of, what we know when we learn that a victim has been strangled by their intimate partner. And so when a victim is strangled, and that happens about 68% of the time in domestic violence cases, it is true that that victim is 750% more likely to ultimately be killed by their abuser. It also means that that victim may have health problems that they don't perceive or understand. But the other thing that is true is that more than half of the law enforcement officers in this country that are killed by a man who has a documented history of having strangled an intimate partner. So by working together, by understanding how to address the specific problem of strangulation better, to form multidisciplinary teams that involve advocates, medical professionals, prosecutors, and law enforcement, we can do a better job of holding those men accountable, which keeps victims safer, keeps their children safer, and it keeps our law enforcement officers safer as well.
Very good. Appreciate it. Thank you. Look forward to learning more.
Thank you.
And welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on then to item number 1, consent agenda. Council, do we have separations for number 1? If not, is there a motion? Councilmember Gulick.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I move to approve the items on the consent agenda as submitted.
Thank you. Second by Councilmember Shaw. Discussion, questions about any of the consent items? Do not see any, so we'll move to a vote on item number 1, our consent agenda. If in favor of the motion, which is for adoption consistent with the staff recommendations, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes item number 1. Moving on to item number 2, our regular agenda. We'll start with item 2A. So Denise, would you read item 2A?
Yes, public hearing, a resolution setting FY 2024 annual assessments for Road Maintenance District 6.
Thank you. Andy is our presenter, so he'll work on bringing up his PowerPoint.
Sharing is caring.
Go ahead and try.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. For item 2, Jennifer and I have a brief slideshow to go through all the items. It is one public hearing, 3 separate votes. So I'll go through the first one, Road Maintenance District 6. I guess just as a reminder, these are just a few of the assessments for FY24 that would be consistent with the budget that was adopted 2 weeks ago. This first one is the Briarwood Emergency Access Road. Just a gravel fire access road, an assessment to 51 properties of $55 each, just to maintain it, re-gravel, spray the weeds, make sure the gate functions. And this is same as it's been actually, I believe, every year since 2015. I think that's all I have. So, Jennifer, shouldn't have waited so long.
All right, for Street Maintenance District 2, we have 2 districts right now. They generate approximately $14.7 million currently. Street Maintenance District 1 is the downtown district, and it is for only additional street sweeping and snow removal. services that we do in that area. We're proposing a 3% increase to Street Maintenance District 1, and then Street Maintenance District 2 is the entire city of Billings, and we're proposing a 7% increase for that district. Right now, the average residential property owner pays $185.08 per year. That would increase by $12.96 to $198.04 for FY24, so just over $1 a month for that. It puts us right in the middle there of the cities in Montana that have street maintenance districts, about $55 more than Great Falls, and it's really about $142 less than Bozeman. For stormwater, we currently generate $5.2 million in revenue. We are asking for a 5.6% increase for stormwater tied to the construction cost index. Right now, the average residential homeowner pays $56.40, and that would increase by $3.16 in FY24 to $59.56. So that's $3.16 per year is what that is. And that puts us just slightly over what Missoula has for rates right now, but below everyone else that we survey. And that is it for Andy and I. So we do need a public hearing tonight, and then we're asking for 3 separate votes, and we recommend approval for all 3.
Okay, thank you. I should have had Denise read into the record item B and C, which obviously we have now just had the presentations on for the street maintenance and also stormwater. So council, let's have questions if there are for any for staff, and after that we'll open up for the joint public hearing. Are there questions for staff? Councilmember Purington on any either A, B, or C?
Thank you. Well, just real quick, because it went too fast. What is the percentage on that stormwater?
It was 5.6%.
5.6, okay. So on the street maintenance, my question on that one, because it's a 7% increase, and you're generating, I would assume out of that, what are you generating towards reserves in the street maintenance district? Don't you generate enough so that it goes into a reserve?
Councilmember Purington, we do have reserves right now. This increase is not to add to reserves, but we do have reserves just because we only get the money twice a year, so we need that amount to operate in between.
So what are those reserves right now?
I would have to look. It's a specific percentage. Do you know?
So if I can continue,
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor. So part of that street maintenance is the snow removal, correct? Is that part of street maintenance, that fund?
The snow removal? Yes.
And so if we don't use it 1 year, then it goes to other things within the street maintenance, or it carries over to another year? Or do we keep adding to the snow removal fund? Or is it a separate fund, really?
So it's all within the same fund for snow removal. But if we don't use it 1 year, we don't need that increase the next year. But we don't add to and have, end up with $800,000 a year for snow removal. It stays at the same amount. We just don't need to increase rates for that.
So I guess my main gist that I'm getting to is to have a 7% increase in your street maintenance district. I'm having a hard time, as I mentioned before in one of my earlier emails, I'm really having a hard time with anything over, 5% increase. What is the reason for that 7% increase? How do you justify a 7% increase?
So 2.3% of the increase is actually for the reduction that occurred last year to street maintenance districts. So we told you at that time we'd need a one-time increase to increase back up. So that's what that is. And then the other 4.7% is just for inflationary items. So yes, the snow removal was not all used up, but we have material costs increasing at 20% with, asphalt, de-icer, and different chemicals.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Other questions for staff on 2A, B, or C? Any other questions? Okay, don't see any. So this is a joint public hearing on items 2A, B, and C, all of those maintenance fees. If you would like to comment, please come to the podium. Is there any public comment on item 2A, 2B, or 2C? Okay, no one is online, no one is coming forward. We'll close the public hearing on all item 2 items. Back to council. Anything else? Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you. I move to approve item 2A, Road Maintenance District 6, as recommended by staff.
Thank you very much. Second by Councilmember Boyette. Discussion. Before we proceed to vote. Don't see any discussion. So motion is for approval, item 2A, consistent with the staff recommendation. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Item 2B, Councilmember Boyette.
Having conducted a public hearing considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the resolution setting assessments on 2B street maintenance as recommended by staff.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Joy. Discussion. Councilmember Purington.
I'm inclined to add an amended version to this, but I'm sure I don't have the votes here. But I just want to say that I won't vote for this increase because I think that we're still looking at a lot of increases across the board in all areas. And so I'm going to go ahead and put an amendment out there that we put that 4.7 inflationary increase, that we take that back down to 3.0 inflationary increase. So that would put it at a, what, 6.3, is that what it was, to make up the 2.3 from last year plus 3 for this year? So that would be 6.3? Just checking my numbers.
5.3%.
5.3, thank you, I can't add either. So it would be a 5.3 increase instead of the 7. So if there's a second for that, that's great.
Okay, thank you. So the motion, and Councilmember Neese made the second. So that is the proposed amendment. Councilmember Purington or anybody else, do you want to speak to your motion?
I already have.
Councilmember Neese, or I'm sorry, Councilmember Rupsis.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. I'm gonna support this amendment just because it wasn't actually a 2.3% decrease last year. We deferred a project. That's not the same as a budget cut. So I think that 2.3 probably doesn't have to be made up, and I'd probably, I'd support this as kind of a compromise position in there.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Jennifer, what happens if we decrease it from to 5.3? What does that do to your bottom line? Can you live with it? Is it a problem, et cetera?
So our CIP is set on this. We would just have to rearrange our CIP and defer what we need to.
Jennifer, while we have you, can you just help us with failing memories to remind us what we did do last year, at least from your perspective? My recollection is it was 32nd Street paving and 36. And one perspective was we just delayed it a year, which is the Public Works version. And Councilmember Rupsis' version is that, no, we just dropped that project either for ever or for additional time period. So can you comment on what we, and tell us more about that project?
So yes, Mayor, it was 36th Street that we did defer. We also, so what we did was we took a $330,000 cut to street maintenance district, and instead Parks got that $330,000 increase. I don't remember the project that they were doing, but it was council's priority at the time. So what happens is we took a less than inflationary amount last year, if we do not make that up, it will affect us this year and going forward. Last year, it had no effect because we did move that project out.
Okay, Councilmember Ripsis?
36th Street isn't on the CIP this year or really any year in the 5-year, right?
Correct, we redid our CIP to add in safe routes to school and the other things, yeah.
So Jennifer, if you're at least getting, I think you said that we'd always be behind the 8 ball if we don't at least keep up with inflation. Didn't we keep up with inflation last year, and whatever your number was, 4 point something, that becomes a critical number, 4.7, we need to at least get to that. How do we go backwards if we have at least added to the budget by the inflation amount?
So we set our budget year after year with certain CIP in mind, and then a certain escalation. So if your budget or your inflationary amount is, we'll just say 5% for last year, and we received a 3% increase, we would lose that money going forward. Now, last year, we made the budget cuts. There was no effect. But because our rates now are lower than they would have been with that inflationary increase, you always lose that going forward when you don't increase with inflation. And that's what's happened in parks all those years where they weren't increasing. So that's what would happen here.
Okay, so what I said before was incorrect. Last year, we did not keep up with inflation, so we built that deficit into future years.
Right.
Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
Okay. So that's a different perspective on reality and the facts here. So, but very fundamental difference. So further discussion. Councilmember Owen?
Sorry, I'm unclear. Maybe we're just saying the same thing in different ways, but it sounds like we had different project priorities. It's not as though we just said, set the rate this low and then everybody takes a haircut. That would be not keeping up with inflation. We just prioritize projects differently, which is perfectly council's prerogative.
So Councilmember Owen, I would agree if street maintenance districts was strictly a capital fund, but it's not. It's how we operate. So when we took a cut in that inflationary amount, that goes forward year after year after year unless we recoup that inflationary part that we lost in a future years.
On the operations side?
Yes.
I see. Okay.
Okay. Further discussion. Councilmember Neese. I'm sorry, Councilmember Neese, did you want to be recognized?
No, I'm sorry. Well, yeah, let me ask this. So we do have an inflationary amount. It's probably a little bit even more than needs to be, I think, in this year. And so I think we're making up some, but I think I agree with Councilmember Rupsis. I mean, we postponed the project. That was the whole idea of that, was to postpone the project, and there was some inflationary increases last year as well. So I'm not so sure we're going to be behind the 8 ball going forward. It's just more of a prioritizing the projects.
Okay. Any further discussion? Councilmember Gielich.
I guess not so much discussion. I'm sorry. I think I still need clarification myself. So it is important for me to maintain, not get behind in terms of our schedule of maintenance on things. What's not clear to me is this increase to put 36th Street paving or widening as a part of this year's, or this, fiscal year 24 into that? Is that part of the increase to cover that, or is it just simply to maintain the streets and the CIP things that were approved earlier?
So what is in the CIP does not include 36th Street at all. We added safe routes to school and some other items that council wanted us to add. Totally reprioritized it this 5-year CIP. So street maintenance districts would fund that portion of the CIP that's allocated to SMDs in there, as well as the operations for snow, sweeping, and everything else we do in streets.
Okay, Councilmember Gillick.
So thank you for addressing that my question. So then, I think I will not support the amendment because I think it's very important that we do keep up with the maintenance. If we start falling behind, then we have that much more reactive, much more expensive types of repairs in the future than staying on top. So based on my understanding now, I don't think I will support the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to just ask staff again to take one more stab at this factual question, because that's what this seems to be turning on. One version is, if I understand correctly, and obviously my understanding is very imperfect, but that if we cut last year's budget for the public works, for this element of public works, in an amount equal to the 36th Street project, and that's a project that didn't happen then, and it's not going to happen in the future anytime soon, but still did increase the budget, why was that increase not sufficient to keep up with inflation? Was the increase just a little too small? But one way or another, it comes down to, last year we keeping up with inflation? There's sort of a version here that says, yes, we were. Jennifer, you said, no, we weren't. Can you just help flesh that out, help us understand why we didn't keep up with inflation last year?
So Mayor Cole, I don't remember what the inflationary rate was last year. I think it was around 9%, and we took much less than that. So at the end, we were asked to remove $330,000 to take out that 36th Street project. So no effect last year. But then the rate that we increased was 5%. And that's just an example.
Well, I think you just answered it.
So when we do the
9% inflation, 5%
Right.
increase creates 4% gap forever.
Right, correct.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, then we have before us Councilmember Purington's motion, seconded by Councilmember Rupsis. We'll put it to a vote. If everybody's prepared to vote and understand it, if in favor of Councilmember Purington's motion to amend the underlying motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Voting in favor were Councilmembers Owen, Neese, Tidswell, Purington, and Rupsis. If opposed, say nay. Nay. Voting in opposition was everybody else, so that'd be 6. Because Councilmember Neese is with us. Councilmembers Shaw, Gulick, Joy, Cole, Tariki, and Boyette. So the motion fails, 5 in favor, 6 against. Brings us back to the underlying motion, which is for approval consistent with the staff recommendation. Further discussion now on the underlying motion. Any further discussion on the underlying motion? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote on the underlying motion for approval, consistent with the original staff recommendation. If in favor of that, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Voting in opposition, council members Tidswell, Purington, Neese. All other council members voting in favor, so motion passed, 8 in favor, 3 opposed. That concludes then item 2B. Bringing us to item 2C, stormwater rates. Any further questions or motion relating to item 2C? Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the resolutions setting assessments on number 2C, stormwater, as recommended by staff.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Okay, we'll move to a vote on item 2C. Motion is for approval. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Councilmember Purington voting in opposition. All other council members voting in favor. Motion passes 10-1. And that concludes then item 2 and brings us to item 3. Denise, would you read item number 3?
Public hearing resolution establishing collection, disposal, and landfill fees for FY 2024. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you very much.
Back to Jennifer.
All right, everybody's favorite topic, solid waste rates. So this item tonight is to set rates for fiscal year '24 for both solid waste collection and landfill rates. I won't go through this slide in detail. You've seen it several times before, but just want to summarize it by saying rate increases are needed in solid waste due to inflation, personnel needs, and capital requirements. While inflation has gone down over the last year, material costs are still up around the 20% mark, which is greatly affecting solid waste. So we're going to start with the easy stuff. Commercial collection, we're proposing 11.3% rate increase. And then for roll-off collection, we're proposing 8.1% increase, and then adding what we're calling a dry run fee. So sometimes we are called to go pull the roll-off and dump it and then bring it back. And sometimes when we get there, they change their mind. So it just gives us an opportunity to charge them for that time that we run out there. For solid waste landfill fees, we are proposing a 10.6% increase under our option A resolution. And so option A has us still subsidizing some of the collection costs, the residential collection costs with landfill. Your option B resolution, the alternate is a 6.4% increase in rates. Regardless of which resolution you're looking at, the outside city rate, which is anywhere else in Montana besides Billings, is 50% more than the city of Billings rate. And then the out-of-state or Wyoming rate is double that of Billings. We also made some changes to our fats, oil, and grease fee, really changed it from a volumetric type fee, which we used to use at wastewater, to more scale-based, so per ton fee, and then increase that to the same as our city of Billings per tonnage fee. And then we added some clean soil parameters in this year. We do take clean soil for free. And we wanted that in there as a line item so that people know that. We use it for cover, so it's very beneficial to us. It saves us money to take that clean soil. So we put the $0 in that for that line item, and then put some parameters in there as to what is clean soil, and that if it's not clean, then it's charged at the same rate as other waste. So for FY23, the per tonnage rate is $23.50 right now for Billings. That would go up to $26 under the recommended option A, and it would be up to $25 under option B. On this chart, we just have option A on here because it got a bit convoluted to do the option B also. But even at the 10.6% increase that we're recommending, we'd still be $1 lower than Bozeman at 27, and much lower than the other cities that we survey. The out-of-state rate and the non-city rate are getting up there a little bit, but still lower than Helena and all those Wyoming cities. So we'll get to the hard stuff now. We'll talk about residential collection. So we presented back in May, it was May 15th at a work session. And during that work session, we presented two options. The first was to move to a more service-based cost model, which included a smaller container option. So we'd have a choice between a 64-gallon container and a 96-gallon container. We proposed changing our extra program into curbside cardboard recycling only. And then we would still, of course, still pick up the bulky items on demand for a fee. And then the second option was to maintain the current program. Some of our goals that we have were to conform to city code, which really says that each property needs to bear its fair share in proportion to the amount of refuse collected. And we wanted to provide a similar curbside experience. Right now, about 50% of our extras are just cardboard anyways. And then if you look at that container, you know, they could have redone that where they put the container as the cardboard as an extra and fit more into their garbage. And we see that all the time with cardboard. So we figured that cardboard was a good option to still have an extra program without eliminating it entirely, and step us into recycling a little bit. The other thing is the extras that we are picking up now are causing injuries and not safe for our employees, so we're trying to get away from that. So council had some direction and a variety of concerns, and I'll go through these more in detail, but basically, we were directed previous year to not continue the subsidy for collection. We had heard some concerns last time that the additional container cost that we were proposing, that $4.50 for an additional container, was not high enough. We also heard many concerns about the extra service, that people wanted to retain that, and that we should modify what we pick up to reflect city code. There was also some talk of a full recycle program rather than just stepping into it with cardboard recycling. So we'll talk to you a little bit tonight about what that would entail. And then there was, I think, across the board, that desire for the smaller container, the 64-gallon container, some public engagement concerns, and then just other leaves, trees, and general refuse piling up type concerns. So for the landfill subsidy, it was really a year ago when we adopted rates before that we presented the subsidy, and council directed us to, we want cost of service rates. We should be doing cost of service for everything we do. So directed us to eliminate that subsidy going forward. So previously, well, even right now, our current rates are set with a 20% rate that is subsidized by the landfill revenues. And we did propose that in May to continue a subsidy to subsidize the recycling part, just because then it made sense to continue a subsidy from a landfill when we're keeping stuff out of the landfill and helping sustain the landfill. Then for the additional container cost, we've had discussions since to see if we would like to change that, but really we proposed a $4.50 charge for that because we want to encourage the use of extra containers as opposed to extras on the ground. It is far more efficient for us to come by and pick it up with our automated side load truck with one person in it than it is to do extras. So we want to encourage those containers, and that $4.50 does still cover the cost of disposing it at the landfill. So for the extra service, there was a number of concerns about what would happen if we got rid of it and wanting to retain that. Last time when we came here in May, we did propose cardboard only, no extras at all besides that cardboard. What we're proposing tonight is a little bit of a change. It would still be cardboard only at the curb, except for we would still have an extra pickup call-in for a fee. And there's various ways we can do that, but what we believe, and if you go back and look at some of the pictures even with those cardboards, and what we believe is people can redo and will, if they're having to pay a fee for extras, that there will be very few extras to pick up that way. If we had to do a full-on cardboard recycling and full-on extra program, we couldn't do it. We don't have the trucks, we don't have the people. We believe that the extra program would be pretty minimal, but it still gives people who are just, I need this gone, that opportunity to call us and pick it up for a fee. So there was a lot of talk last time about making sure that we do conform with city code and that we're kind of creating some of the problems ourselves. And you're not wrong. It's a problem that we created long ago where we decided we are going to provide the utmost customer service and get zero complaints, so we pick up whatever is there. We probably shouldn't be picking up some of what we're doing, but it's going to take a lot of education to do that. In fact, city code right now is very limited if we do follow that, or if we want to modify it. But if we follow city code, only containers and bags that are designed for refuse are allowed as extras. So right now, about 75% of our extras don't comply with city code. And if you look at the pictures on the left, those would be allowed under city code. So a lot of those bags, I don't know how many are there, 30 bags of trash would be allowed. If you just have a can out or an extra bag, that would be allowed. All those on the right would not be allowed. And that bottom picture there with that very neatly stacked cardboard, we don't mind that. That's actually a nice pile for us and our drivers, but that's not allowed under city code. But some of the other things, we agree that we should be doing it differently. And some of the things that we've been picking up as extras should really be picked up as a bulky item with a bulky truck. So as far as a full recycle program and what that would take, just a mere $6.2 million and we could do it next year. But those costs are for, the upfront costs are for trucks and containers, mostly trucks. So because we've gone the path that we have in the city with a extra program where we have all of our rear load trucks for that, we would need to convert those and as we replaced them, convert them into side load trucks. And so we would need all new side load trucks to start a full recycling program as well as the container costs. That $2.1 million is mostly the amount that we would have to pay to dispose of it for recycling. That would be our recycling costs. That's based on single stream recycling costs today. We don't know what that will be in 5 years or 10 years. So we just use today's cost for that. We will need less personnel to do that. So we took that into consideration. And then there's, of course, the replacement costs will be going forward for replacing those trucks and containers. So that is actually one of the reasons why we thought we could do cardboard now. We could just change to cardboard now and recycle cardboard because we don't have that money to do the full recycling program. If council desired to move in that direction, it would take 8.7% increases over the next 5 years to get us there. And that's, in addition to any other rate increases we needed to keep operations going in solid waste. If you wanted to move to a 10-year program where we implement it in 10 years, it'd be about 4.9% per year that we would need to increase to get us there. So we decided, let's start with cardboard. Cardboard is about 15% of our waste stream, and landfills across the country, it's about 34% of their volume in landfills. So it's big. So we thought this would be an easy way to get things out of the waste stream. And there is a market right now for cardboard recycling. And like I said earlier, approximately 50% of extras are cardboard only. So cardboard, our thought was to give the same curbside experience as people have now, because look at that barrel too. You could move that cardboard to the curb and they'd have additional room in their barrel. And do that for customers without just outright eliminating the extra program. And it would also increase sustainability at the landfill. It's safer for our drivers, and it would just be a phase-in step for recycling if council wanted to move in that direction. So another concern that came up was we wanted a smaller container no matter what. The problem is we can't pick and choose between the parts that we were proposing. So if we put out a smaller container, and we still have the extras program that we have now, everyone would want to go to that smaller container and smaller price and then just put out more extras. So it wouldn't make sense. We have to modify our extra program to do those smaller containers. For public engagement, we do understand that we need a lot of very extensive short-term outreach. We've been watching another city roll theirs out and see how that theirs is going. But we wouldn't propose going out to the public and really rolling it out until council says, yes, this is what we want to do, because we don't want to cause any kind of panic or anything before it's actually going to be something that we're going to implement. We are proposing tonight that you delay any programmatic changes for September 11th, 2023 start date to give us time not only for the public engagement, But for ordering containers and bidding that recycling, if that's the option you go, we have a number of things to get in place. We're going to go for September 1, because that's easy for people to remember, but then there's Labor Day, so we didn't want to do it on a holiday week. That's why it's a weird 9/11 date for a start time is what we're proposing. And then there were just concerns about what do people do if they just need trash picked up at their house and they have all these items, or they have, 20 bags of leaves because they're coming in to the yard from other neighbors. We proposed last time, and we would still propose to have a couple of drop-off events for the city. We'd have the leave one that we did last fall to allow people to drop those off for us, and then a spring cleanup one as well. We could add one in there as well to do something in the fall if you wanted to, but we would still accommodate those events for people to help with that cleanup. So you have two resolutions in your packet before you to consider. We are recommending option A, as it is in line with what the Energy and Conservation Commission, has recommended, and then also what the Public Works Board recommended. So option A includes a fee of $13.90 for a 96-gallon trash container. And then it has the option for a smaller 64-gallon trash container for $9.90. An additional 96-gallon container would be $4.50. The green barrel is included in your rate, and an additional green barrel would also be $4.50. The extras would be cardboard at the curb once per month when we do, except for it would be on your day of service instead of the Monday. But we would change the extras into that cardboard, and we would be recycling that cardboard. Then we would have the call-in service for extras. We are proposing, or what was in our resolution was $5 per item. We've had lots of debate about that in staff. We went with $5 per item because we were envisioning if we did it per trip, an entire neighborhood bringing all of their extras to one house on one day. And in looking at other cities, they usually, well, actually all of the ones that we looked at do it per item, but they do usually propose, like a 32-gallon limit, so that's their limit. We didn't have a limit specified, so we might want to change that in there to specify what an item is. If we did per trip, we could change it to per trip. I'm not sure what that amount would be. We would need it enough that people don't think that this is something that they want to do all the time, because we just don't have the staffing if we did the cardboard pickup also to do that. And then our second option would be alternate B, and that is continuing our program as is without a subsidy for from the landfill. And so, like I said before, the option A does include that subsidy for from the landfill. So under option B, your 96-gallon container would be $16.80, and that would also include your green barrel and extras at one time per month for no extra cost. And then your additional 96-gallon or an additional green barrel would be $4.50. So both options are shown here. The $13.90 puts us below all other cities surveyed. Option B puts us below Great Falls, Kalispell, or above Great Falls, Kalispell, and Helena, and below everything else. And so our recommendation tonight from staff is to adopt option A resolution that includes that $13.90, the cardboard recycling, and the subsidy from the landfill, as well as the 64-gallon container. But with delayed implementation of programmatical changes to September 11th, 2023. And we are here for questions.
Sorry, no questions. We'll move ahead. Councilor Boyette.
Well, I'll start the questioning. How's that? Jennifer, apparently we haven't, our computer system isn't up to speed and we're going to replace it in February, something like that?
So our billing software is what is being replaced. Implementation, our go live is February of 2024. Forgot what year I was in. It's been here so long.
So what will that do differently than we're doing now? What capability would that new software do for us?
So there have been asks to be able to charge people for extras out in the field, where a driver could say this person has an extra and charge that back to billing where it would flow. Right now it can't. There is no way to get that to billing right now. And so the new system, we'd be able to do that.
And so just to clarify, in the case of extras, that's why they would have to call, and a person in the office puts on their account the extra charge.
Correct.
Councilmember Tidswell, Councilmember Purington.
Jennifer, Public Works has been very gracious in cleaning up any mess that's been left on the curb, as it were. How would you enforce that? How quickly would that? How quickly would that change?
So we would need a lot of education, or we're going to have a lot of angry calls, and you'll have a lot of angry calls. So even that change, I think we would need a couple months before we really started enforcing that of constant education and figuring out what that was, using our partner Lee Enterprises for that as well.
Thank you.
Councilmember Purington.
Thank you. So Jennifer, I had sent, I think you and I think council got to some of my questions, comments. A couple of things that I didn't feel were answered was this cardboard being subsidized. And I don't know if you're thinking Republic or some out-of-town vendor for recycling, because we're not recycling it. We're going to send it away, or we're going to put it in the dump. So or in the landfill. So what are we doing with the cardboard exactly?
So the amount that we used for calculating rates was based on an estimate from an in-town vendor that does recycling now. So we would be partnering with somebody else in town and taking that cardboard to them for them to put on a truck and recycle.
So do we have to pay them to take that cardboard?
The price that we received was $100 per ton. So we would need to bid it, so that was just one estimate, but that was the price at the time.
And that was my other question, is that it would go out for bid.
Yes.
So, so I'm kind of confused on how that's actually going to help. And so I guess my other question with that is, does our shredder, does it accommodate cardboard? Can we not shred this cardboard and use it in composting, some other material that we're using?
I'm going to
composting
have
material?
Kyle explain more. He knows far more about composting and recycling than I do. But it's my understanding that cardboard has to be a certain type and can be used in some composting, but I'm not sure that Billings is there yet, but I'll let Kyle speak to that.
Good evening. To answer your question, yes, the shredders can handle the cardboard. This is my third city I've worked in. All others have had a composting program. Not one of them have included paper waste into their composting waste stream for one reason or another. I don't know the reasons. The majority just do green waste, food waste, and then they leave the cardboards and all that other stuff to be recycled in the traditional manner that we're talking about.
Outside of our city anyway, it would not be done here. It wouldn't be recycled here for use.
The vendor is located here if we choose to select that vendor. But what they do with it, if their markets are out of the state, then yes, they will ship it out of the state.
Okay, I have more questions, Mr. Mayor, but, well, I'll let others
Okay.
and then I'll.
Sure.
Thank
Councilmember
you.
Joy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Maybe this question is, I don't know who it's for. How did we get kind of out of whack with our ordinances in terms of what we're supposed to be picking up? I mean, going from containers and bags to just those pictures, how do you think that happened? It's not particularly important, but I think it is important in terms of thinking about how far we need to go to get the public educated on what they should be doing. Thank you.
I mean, I can take a stab at it. So those pictures, as bad as those pictures were, some of those pictures were that you saw 2 years ago when I got here was a lot worse. So I think just over the years, in the name of wanting to help people out and customer service, it just evolved into what we've got today. When I got here, it was really out of control in regards to construction and demolition debris and things like that. So, I mean, just like anything, if it goes unchecked for years, it grows in the name of, yeah, I'll help you out, this one time, and then that one time turns into, okay, maybe a second time, and where do you cut it off and that kind of stuff, so.
Thank you.
Kyle, just to clarify, make sure I'm understanding correctly, the once a month, it would still be a once a month pickup of cardboard, and it would be done by the same truck that is picking up other extras. Is that correct?
That would be correct. We would repurpose those extra trucks as they stand today to pick up cardboard.
So that truck would have a cardboard section and it would have an extra section?
No, we couldn't do that. All of our trucks have one body compartment, so we would not be able to commingle the cardboard and the trash if we wanted to recycle the cardboard.
Okay, so I misspoke then. It would not happen at the same time, but it would happen on the same day by two different crews.
That's what we're envisioning. So like if we come by your house and you have some cardboard and just some regular junk that you want collected that you've paid for, the same truck will not be able to collect those.
Okay, separate extras truck. And then can you comment, one of the challenges of extra pickup today is it's not on your regular garbage day. And people just, it's not that complicated, but it's a bit of a barrier, especially getting used to it.
Right.
And you can't just look out and see, oh, everybody's got their cans out today. That's a good reminder. Can you comment, the staff report says that the goal, if I remember right, is to move to the extra pickup and the cardboard pickup on the same garbage day. And we're going to have a major change of schedules for everybody, or 80% are going to potentially move to a different day of the week. Can you comment on the scheduling issue?
Yeah, so the main reason I think that we'll be able to accomplish that is because we are going to do this optimization project and reroute roughly 85% of our residential customers. Right now, on any given day, we have trucks in Center City, West End, and the Heights. It's really hard to flex our equipment and flex our staff when we're stretched out that far. What we will do once the optimization takes place is we will have, I'll take the Heights only because geographically it's easy to kind of picture in your mind. All of our equipment and all of our staff will be in the Heights on one day. So if we're not having to travel 30 minutes in between routes, we will be able to pick up more, pick it up faster. That was the whole reason putting it on a Monday, was in the event that we were short-staffed or had a bad mechanical day, that we could flex that service further into the week. But if we're going to limit it to just cardboard and charge for extras, which we believe will drive the demand down for extras, I am confident that we can do that on your trash service day.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Owen, Councilmember Boyette, and Councilmember Gulick.
So I want to go back to this issue about composting.
Okay.
It's not technically impossible to compost, right?
No,
I mean,
no.
some green waste,
It
some
could,
brown,
yep,
some,
yep.
so we could do it.
We could, and we could definitely look into that. We'll look into whatever is the most economical way to do it, if that is the case.
I guess my concern is based on, rumors or presuppositions.
Right.
It sounds like we don't have any real way to know that the cardboard's actually being recycled. We're going to send it to someone and they're going to do something with it. And we don't actually know if that just gets driven to someone else's landfill or actually recycled.
I mean, you bring up a good point, but I think if you have a good community partner, I think there has to be an inherent level of trust there.
So do you think that people are actually recycling?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes.
And why?
Why? Because I think it's the right thing to do. And there is a little bit of market for it right now, and there is a little bit of
That's what I'm getting at, is the end, the market, not
Yeah.
the goodwill of the people. Where's it going?
Right now, the markets are out on the West Coast in the Seattle area and down in Salt Lake City.
And for what?
for cardboard right now.
To be remade into new
Into,
cardboard or?
into other paper products. So more cardboard, paper bags, paper, whatever.
So why would we not just contract with a private company to come by and pick up the cardboard itself instead of us picking it up, bundling it and giving it to the private company? Why not just have them come in and do the pickup?
If that's something that the council wishes to look into, we could look into it. However, I think, the mayor pays 30 some odd bucks a quarter or a month or.
Per month, something like that.
So when you have a private contractor come and do it, it may start to get cost prohibitive for some people to do that.
And so our cost advantage is the bulk. We give them so much at once, they give us a better deal.
Correct.
Okay. And then my last question for now is why would we not wait to do this, the changes on extras and cardboard pickup, until that rerouting is done? So the public only has to adjust one time.
Well, so by September, that rerouting will be done and we will be ready to push that out. So that is the goal. This is going to be the last change.
Got it.
Or there's a for sale sign going in my yard.
Thank you, Councilmember Boyette. Gulick and Joy.
Thank you, Mayor. So just so the public understands, I have a 96-gallon black can in my driveway. I have a bunch of cardboard, and I got a garbage bag and a couple other things. They'll come by and pick up my 96 gallons and dump it. They'll pick up my cardboard, but they won't pick up my other stuff unless I pay individually for each one of those, right?
That is what we are proposing, yes, sir.
Okay. And the public doesn't know how much that's going to cost them for those little extra bags, $5 a piece?
$5 a piece is what we just presented.
Okay, so my concern is the people that are dumping that stuff up now, they're not going to pay attention to this. They'll just take it and dump it in Councilman Owen's backyard or in her driveway, because these people aren't the ones that are carrying enough to box it up to start with. I'm just concerned that their garbage might become my garbage for a price.
Councilmember Gulick.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Kyle. So talking about $100 a ton is the current market amount. Does not the recycling, though, also extend the life of the landfill, so we would not incur costs for having to expand the cells? And so if that is the case, is that factored into, I guess, the cost?
You want to take this one? So it does extend the life of the landfill, and I wouldn't say that it saves the expansion cost, because eventually we are going to have to expand. It just delays the expansion cost.
But if we had to do 5 cells over 20 years instead of 3 or something like that, obviously we'd be spending more over a given period of time if we were kept on filling up the.
That is correct. So the end goal here is, if we are going to do 5 over the next 20 years, just to use your example, the end goal is can we push it back to 4? Can we push it back to 3? Which is better for everybody involved.
Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to clarify, it's $72 a quarter for private pickup at your front door for recyclables. It's costly. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyle, well, I've got Councilmember Ripsis. My question deals with this issue of charging per item with extras. Most of the cost is driving there, getting out of the truck, throwing something up. And so to pay, if you had 5 bags of leaves, for example, to pay $25 does not seem proportionate to the person who has 1 bag at $5. So what are other options there? It's just hard to, I have some concern that savvy people will make sure that every bag weighs about 100 pounds. And despite the ads for, what's the great company that's so tough? Hefty. Yeah, that's going to cause problems. So do we have options in that space to deal with that issue in some fashion? And Jennifer took the podium. So Jennifer.
Yes, Mayor, there were a number of options. I don't remember when we presented this slide, if it was last fall possibly, but we could do different things. Like I said, we settled on a per item cost because well, for one thing, I don't think anybody's going to call us to pick up 1 bag, right? They're going to save it up anyways. But if we did have a per trip our fear is that they will pool resources with others. Pretty sure my neighborhood would have a neighborhood day where we all put out at one person's house and call for that extra pickup. But we did present for some options last fall when we first were talking about pay-as-you-throw. So there is a per item. We talked about tags and bags, unlimited pile for a flat rate. You know, we could do an area assessment, so $10, and I know that Kyle thinks this is too low, but $10 for 20 square feet, or, you know, $20 for 40 square feet, something like that, where people can come in or call in and estimate about what they have. There is subjective assessments for like small, medium, and large, but they are subjective, and so they're obviously open to be challenged, and you might get into situations where then the driver's having conflicts in the field when they see what they're supposed to be picking up. In looking at what other cities do, it really is the per item charge that they've gone with, but they do say per bag or per gallon or per can. So they limit that, so it's not these huge sacks or these huge, I don't know how big of container that they could possibly find, but they limit that size so that it's really clear what an item equates to. But we have these various options that we could use if council preferred.
Okay, so just to clarify, if we were to approve this tonight, there'd be some staff level of discretion in developing internal policies that would flesh this out, because there's a lot of questions. We're sailing in uncharted waters here, obviously, and we don't want you to have to come back to us every week to clarify it, but.
We don't want to be back either,
Yes,
so.
I bet you don't. So, okay, so there'd be some level of refinement of this definition, I guess, is what I would anticipate.
I think it depends on how the resolution reads to what we stick in there to give us that flexibility or not. Right now, it is in there as $5 per item is how option A reads. And then option B has no per item because that's your extras, just like you do now.
Okay, Councilmember Ripsis and Councilmember Parrington?
Thank you, Mayor. Kyle, this is really interesting to me. So our recycling partner, they are going to charge us for their supplies and then sell those supplies to another company to do the actual recycling?
Yes.
That's a great model. Like why are we paying them to take, nobody else has their suppliers pay them to take their supplies?
So before 2018, 2017, somewhere in there, that was flip-flopped when all of our recyclables were exported to China.
Okay.
The third party would come in and they would bid a very low, if not a zero per ton upfront cost, because they knew the market on the back end would support their revenue and their profit margins and all that. And when China shut the gate on us, it all upended, and now they get their cost up front and share the revenue on the backside if there is any.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And just one more. And so are we going to have, I guess, essentially the consistency to not pick up cardboard that's also loaded up with styrofoam and the other packing pieces and that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
are they going to be checking this to make sure that?
It is styrofoam only. Now, if you got a box that's got 8 pounds of tape on it, no, we're not going to be cutting the box open. We would just hope that we've got residents doing the right thing. But if you got a box that's open and it's visible and you've got trash and styrofoam in there, we're going to leave it.
All right. Thank you.
We'll tag it and we'll leave it.
Thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Parrington?
Thank you. So Jennifer, maybe you, Kyle, could be. So my question is, with the extras, with the cardboards, how would rollout containers throughout the city assist our customers? And they can put their cardboard in it, they can put their extras in it. If they're really bulky items and they don't fit in the containers and they don't leave them outside the container, which I realize that would be a challenge for some. What is the cost variable in having rollout containers throughout the city? and we don't have all these trucks running around, because I understand that that's costly.
Councilmember Purrington, that's an option. If we didn't have any extras, we had no cardboard pickup, we could do those kind of drop-off facilities. They'd have to be manned. If they're not manned, it would be commingled with all kinds of things, and you couldn't recycle it. What we proposed was to try to give people the same curbside experience. People are used to this extra system that they have now, and we thought if we just pulled that away without giving them any option to do anything with their additional trash, they'd be pretty up in arms. So that is why we proposed what we did. But that would be an option only if we didn't have any of the extra trucks, because we could use those people to man those drop-off facilities.
So, follow up, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
So, right now, you're saying that 15% of the cardboard that goes in, or cardboard is 15% of what goes in the landfill, right?
Correct.
Okay. But then 50% of the extras is cardboard. So what's the other 50%?
So 50% is cardboard only right now. So it's just cardboard at the curb, what we're doing right now. But the extras could be anything from chairs or TVs or just extra, household refuse, or, they're doing a little remodeling and cleaning out some things. That would be your extras. It's a range of things. It could be carpet. It's a lot of things that we see out there.
To me, those are big bulky items that would not be part of a curbside pickup. The large bulky items that you just mentioned, some of the pictures that are there, tires and some of those things, to me, the city would say, no, we don't pick that up. You have to take it to the landfill. I don't know if the landfill has certain areas for the rubber, for the tires. And I know now it's required that you have to be able to close your lid. And I can't tell you how many people you go by and you see it's overflowing. So are those tagged at that point and they're not picked up? It's still that same old, well, we'll get it this time, but don't do it again.
I think it's both. I know people that have been tagged. They report themselves to me, friends that have been tagged. So we are doing that, but there is, when the drivers are having trouble finishing their route in a day, they're not out there tagging. They're just picking everything up because it's faster for them. So we're not doing probably what we should and tagging every single one at this point. To answer Councilmember Boyette's question about earlier of, not wanting other people's trash in your own, I can tell you every other city charges for extras and they don't end up with this problem. But it's a lot of education. And so a lot of those people, you're right, they're probably not going to be on our Facebook page watching it and saying, oh, this is rolling out. We have to be a little bit different and smarter about our education process with this. And it will include, a variety of things in print, mail, Facebook, that social media part. And it will have to end up being some very targeted things as we see things in the next couple months, and getting information specifically to those households that we're seeing abuse this system.
Okay.
Mayor?
Councilmember Boyette?
Mayor.
Thank you. What percentage of the population would use the 64-gallon can?
Can't see him, so I just wanted to let
Okay, thank you. I apologize for interruption. Councilmember Boyette, we're going to get Councilmember Neese when you're done. He's had his hand up, but we can't see him from here, so we've been informed that. So Councilmember Boyette and then Councilmember Neese.
What percentage of the population would use a 64-gallon container versus the 96?
We don't know. We estimated about 10% is what we estimated.
Thank you. Councilmember Neese, it's all yours. We apologize. When we have a PowerPoint up here, we can't see you. So feel free at any point to just go ahead and say something if I don't see you.
Okay, Councilmember
No,
Dees,
that-
go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. That's okay. There were some good questions that they were being asked, and I felt I just let them roll because some of those were mine. So Jennifer, I do have a question for you regarding option A. In the fact that the council voted last year to not subsidize the garbage rates. So what would option A be as what the council voted to do without the subsidy?
So, Councilmember Neese, your question then is, what's option A not subsidized by the landfill?
Correct, because that's what the council directed Public Works to do last year, is to remove the subsidy. So what would that rate be this year now that we're moving to a different program?
Just roughly, you would need to add about $3 to the $13.90. So, close to $17, what the alternative rate would be.
So roughly the same as option B then?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And so what happens when, and I'm a little confused on the cardboard, whether we're paying someone $100 a ton or the city's getting paid $100 a ton, which is that?
We are paying somebody $100 per ton.
Okay, so what happens when it goes up to, and I was just looking at a site for cardboard markets, and it says it fluctuates anywhere from 20 to 210. So let's say it doubles to 210 for us to take the cardboard. What happens to our rate structure or the recycling cardboard mid-year if suddenly it's changed to be that expensive to replace?
Well, I'm not sure what we would structure the bid at, probably a set price for a while, but we change rates once a year, so we would have to accommodate any kind of market change like that in subsequent rate changes.
Okay, so if we were to get a bid, if we go out for a bid on this and it turns out to be $200 a ton we have to pay, we probably couldn't institute it this year because our rates would maybe be able to capture it, or would this rate still be able to capture that?
If we are not picking up until September, I think between reserves and just not knowing, there were so many assumptions that went into how many people would be putting out cardboard, how much cardboard would there be, for that per tonnage, and using those estimates, that I think that we could still move forward with it this year, even if it came in higher than the $100 per ton.
Okay, and then moving to option B for a moment, again, since option A had the subsidy, what would the rate be for option B if we were to do the subsidize it like we are doing option A?
Councilmember Neese, it would be, I think it was in the memo, but it would be around 1345, somewhere around there is what it would be.
Okay, so a little bit less than option A subsidized, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then on the extra pickups, I do agree with you. I think if we start throwing out 64s, people may order 64s and throw out a lot of extras, and then it would be a lot more work on the extras to pick that up. And there needs to be some way we need to have a program that disincentivizes that. So I understand in February when the rates or the billing software comes, you can track that better as far as if someone is throwing out trash extras, and they should be, and I believe you quoted the code to me, something about if you have to be able to have receptacles with 7 days of trash. So if the driver sees that after 7 days they're consistently not having their trash in the receptacles, we can at that point say, well, you need to have a second black barrel. Is that correct?
Correct. Our software could do that. And thanks for bringing that up. I think I breezed through that in the presentation. The code does state that the property owner should have containers on site to store 7 days of trash, which means that a lot of people right now if they have extras every single month, they should really be using an extra container, is what they should go to.
Right, and I think if we had a billing software on that, we could track that and actually that we wouldn't have the issue of people throwing out extras and not being billed for it. It would just be those once in a while spring cleanouts or fall pickups, something like that, where they would, an unusual case. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, if we had the software, what it could do is allow us to bill those extras per household as we went, rather than the call-in that we are asking for now. But we would not be able to do that kind of extra program and do a cardboard. So just wanted to be clear, we can't do both, a full-on extra program and cardboard.
Right, and I agree with you. I don't think we can either. It sounds to me like now from hearing from Kyle, we're gonna be running two programs now, but it'll be more, we're hoping that it's more limited because you're gonna have to have those trucks picking up extras, which is trash, and also picking up cardboard. So we're actually adding, a whole service instead of substituting the service. So I do have some concerns about the $5 charge per bag. I don't have a solution for that yet. I think if we had a billing option in place, I think that could be resolved in a much better way, and maybe give people X number of extras per year that they can use and call in and schedule it, but that wouldn't be able to get done until probably the billing is in place. I do want to switch to the green barrel, if you don't mind.
Okay.
On the green barrels, you and I talked a little bit about this before. This is green waste. This is good stuff, and I think although we don't want excess green waste, I think a lot of times, depending on the time of year, people do need 2 barrels of green, but they don't use it all the time. And I think it's maybe a disincentive to have that. Do we know how many people actually utilize the second green barrel?
Oh, I could look that up real quick, but I don't have it in my head right now.
Pretty small number, though.
It's, yeah, proportionately a small number, I think it's less than 1,000.
Okay, would it, by going to a zero charge like it is today on the green barrel, would that impact the overall rate structure very much on the option A?
Councilmember Neese, it would not impact us greatly if council wanted to change the second green barrel to no charge. When we talked, like we said, we internally had many discussions on, do you charge for an extra green barrel or not? Because it is waste that's not going into the landfill. Ultimately, we decided that because it was an extra container, we have that extra container cost, and most people are only paying for the or only needing the 1 barrel. And then if everybody had a second barrel, it would be filling up our trucks faster, having to go to landfill and costing more in fuel. That is why we went with the additional green barrel. But we did go back and forth. That is not anything that we would have any problem with changing staff-wise if council desired that additional green barrel charge to still be $0. It is right now.
Okay. Thank you. I think, Mayor, that's all the questions I have for now. I'll let some other people ask some questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Tricky, and then when Councilmember Tricky is done, Jennifer, I'm just going to ask you to clarify what we did do about the subsidy keeping landfill costs higher. Councilmember Neese used the term that we voted on that. I just don't remember. Was there actually a vote, or were you just taking a sense of what people were saying? So, but I'll let you think about that, and we'll go to Councilmember Tricky. Councilmember Tricky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, citizens of Billings. So would it be an option right now for someone to have, like, say, 3 64-gallon ones or 196 and 164? Can we be that flexible right now, or are we going to need to wait for the new billing system?
The program that we set up was for the 64-gallon. If you can use a 64-gallon and that's all the waste you have, that would be when you get a 64. You wouldn't have two 64s. If you had a 96 and you needed an extra one, it would also be a 96.
Yeah, okay. But it is possible as we move forward to have a mix match.
We could probably do that. It would be better after the software change, but we'd have to kind of think about, we always think about the customer behavior and how that influences it, so we'd have to kind of think through that.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, if I want a second barrel, I wouldn't necessarily want maybe one big one small one, whatever. But anyway, do we need to be thinking about changing the ordinance? Is that something we should have on our do list?
Councilmember Tariki, I think it depends on what the vote is tonight a little bit, because right now it doesn't allow a person to set out cardboard just on the curb like we are proposing in option A. So we would need to make that change to the ordinance to do that. In looking, it seems rather restrictive just compared to what we do. But if you look at other cities, it's what they require that do extras. They require it bagged or in a container of some kind. So I don't really think it's that restrictive, except for the cardboard component.
One of the things that occurred to me as I was looking at it is that we're not actually requiring them to use our receptacles. They could actually be using anything that they wanted to, which wouldn't necessarily automatically get lifted up. So that was what actually triggered that in my mind. I guess we'll see at the end of the year how big of a problem the extra waste actually is. Have you had any conversations yet with code enforcement about having them help try to get a handle on the size of that? Or do we just kind of want to wait and see what happens?
We would begin conversations with code enforcement to partner with them, depending on what council votes tonight and the direction that we go. But we would definitely need to be partnering with code enforcement in this.
Okay, cool. Everything else I have are comments.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Purington? And then the council, I'll just remind you, we're about at break time. Looks like we probably have half a dozen people in the audience who'd like to comment. If they take 3 minutes, that's another 20 minutes. So I think rather than taking those comments, we will try to break at our traditional 7:30 time or so. Come back, get public comment, and then try to go to comments and action. Councilmember Purington now?
Thank you. So Jennifer, how many actually use the extra service? I know that the truck was driving around just on my street. It seemed like they were there a long time.
About 20, is it 25%? Is that the right number?
Every Monday, it seems like it's 80%, but that could be.
I think it's, the number that I remember is about 25% use the extra system.
Okay. So, and I'm just going to go back to this subsidizing thing. I don't understand. I don't know why I'm just being really, I just can't get it. Why does it cost less if we, let me make sure, that's, yeah, on option A. If we take in cardboard, and I would assume that's going to be bundled some, you have to have it bundled. You can't just have it spread out for wind and rain and whatever. Why does it cost less if we're subsidizing with cardboard and we're paying to have someone take the cardboard away? Why does it cost less?
The 1390 as opposed to the 1680, is that one? Because the 1390 is subsidized by landfill fees and the 1680 is not.
Oh, I always thought it was the cardboard that was doing that. Okay, so if we went to option B, but we used the landfill subsidy, then it would bring it down to that 1390, and then you would have all the other items on there. Is that correct? I mean, that's the main difference in those two options.
Correct. Council could choose to not subsidize and go with option B. And to answer your question from earlier, Mayor, there was no vote. It was just council direction on moving forward with no subsidy.
Okay. Councilmember Ripsis?
Just real quick, thanks, Mayor. And I just want to say that you want to subsidize things you want to encourage people to do. So I fully support continuing the subsidy, even though last year when we had this conversation, I said we shouldn't be subsidizing people to just throw out more trash. Using a subsidy to encourage them to recycle, I think, is a very appropriate use of those funds. And so I would support the subsidy in that way.
Okay, council, let's take a break. It's 7:30. Members of the public, thank you for your patience. We'll come back in about 5 minutes, about 7:30, close to 7:35 as we can, and open up for public comment.
Yes, they were very cool. Yeah, I really did. You know, if I sit at the dog park, I can just watch it. Yeah. Because if they're up on the hill, I can see them. Right.
Yeah, they're doing a big pet section down on the backside. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yes, I drove the whole thing.
On Crackish?
Yeah, there's a lot of mud after all the rain every day, but they scrape it and get started. Okay.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I drove the whole thing. That's crazy.
Sorry I couldn't reply.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was up there and I was like, yeah.
I'm so glad you did. It made me happy.
I don't think 20% of people use extras. I mean, at some point in the course of the year, yeah. But in any given month, I think it's probably closer to about 10% based on driving out of the neighborhood today, my count.
Concern is paying for this cardboard to go out of town and not knowing actually what's there. We knew that we could use it for composting. I'm just concerned that we don't know that it's actually, in the environment, it's not really doing anything.
I think the point is it saves us money. It's a liability. We pay people to get rid of our liabilities all the time. When we get rid of our, you buy new tires, you pay for it. Somebody to take your old tires, and you get rid of old oil, or batteries, et cetera. And that's all cardboard. It's a liability. It's just less of a liability because somebody will pay for it. They're not taking and dumping it in the ocean. They're not dumping it in the Missouri River. That's probably true.
It's interesting, after you and I spoke this morning, Gavin and I ran 3 miles in the neighborhood. I told you, I think it was 10% or fewer. Yeah. By the time our meeting was closing, and I drove out of the building, I would say that the number was easy. 10 or 15%. Mostly right up.
Yeah. Yeah. We make it too easy. Yeah. Yeah.
My husband gets mad if I don't break down boxes. I'm just going,
We've got the utility knife.
Yeah.
It is amazing to me how different culture can be. We didn't have curbside recycling. But when we had curbside recycling, you paid for it. There was no notion it was going to be free. And in fact, recycling, I think, costs more than really close.
Well, mine does, by far, it's twice as much to get my recycling picked up. Once, or twice a month.
There's got to be a number of which it's too high.
Third-party company, then yeah, that's a real possibility.
Republic sold that.
He's new.
If,
So, I'm a little confused. The, emergency resolution that you did on Friday, doesn't council have to?
Prove it? No.
No.
They can rescind it. And I guess we should have said that, but they don't have to approve
Or
it.
whatever.
Right.
Okay, I thought we had other emergency ones that we did like last year or something.
Yeah.
And then it came up that they had to,
It'd be worth
what's
checking.
the word that I'm looking for?
Ratify.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Or something.
It'd be worth checking again. I'm just going based on vague recollection. They certainly have the power to rescind it. But if they don't do that, but I'm 51% certain,
Okay.
but I'm not 99% certain. Okay?
Yeah, I was like, and
And it's not on the agenda to do, so we
No.
couldn't do it tonight, but it's worth,
No, it
it's
could
worth
have been
checking.
added, though.
It could have,
Been added
yeah.
onto the consent agenda when you guys kind of like approve the agenda anyways, whether you're gonna
Yeah.
add something or take something off. I think it's the same motion to add or whatever.
Yeah,
Anyway, I was,
It's worth checking.
remember.
It is worth
All right,
checking.
okay.
If everybody can take a seat, we'll get started. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Members of the public, you've heard a lot of the discussion. We'll open up for a public hearing then on item number 3, which are the proposed collection and disposal and landfill fees for Public Works Department. You've heard the discussion. If you'd like to comment, we'd ask that you tell us your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes and your address so we can know who you are. So please, the podium is yours. Will somebody be able to see whether we have online, and maybe we need to get rid of the PowerPoint so we can see that as well. So, very good. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Margaret Beeson at 643 Burlington Avenue. What else was I supposed to tell you? Right. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. And I have to say, last time we came about this, we were here about 4 hours and listening to the Public Works. And and Kyle, I'm so impressed with all of the research, all the details, everything they presented. And I'm having come from the West Coast in Seattle where everybody recycles and they have to do it or, they get cited. I'm very happy that we are engaging on this. I think it's simple to start out with cardboard. I too have been paying, started out with Earth First Aid, 16 years ago or more when they first started. It was 46 for a quarter. I happen to know the person, had spoken in depth many times with the person who runs that program, and he only takes things that has an end product for, so he's not going to end up throwing it somewhere where it doesn't belong. And he's very committed to making sure that the end is managed, the end products, the end of the recycling chain is managed really well. And I think cardboard is obviously a very simple and great place to start, and I'm excited that we're doing that, because if you look in trash cans, you will see how, especially with Amazon now, with COVID, they're being filled up by cardboard boxes that are not broken down. So it takes up a lot of space. So I think people will actually appreciate having that opportunity, so they have more space in their garbage. So I'm glad that we're engaging upon this, and hopefully we can continue to reduce the need for more use of the landfill by moving on and recycling more things like we do in many other cities in this country. The last thing I want to say is I do belong to the Yellowstone Valley Citizens Committee, and there are 500 members, and we have just presented this whole program and taken on wanting to support this. So we are going to work with the one person we want to work with the one person at Public Works to educate the public. So you'll have a lot of people at your fingertips to help you educate the public and help them understand how good this is for everybody, and we can put it in a real positive way. Really start out like what the problem is, where people are having difficulties, and help people become successful at putting the trash where it belongs. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ann Ferguson, 436 Lewis in Billings. And just have some concerns. If cardboard going to be in another container, like the black, the green for grass and brown for cardboard, meaning you gotta have 3 in your front yard if you have no alley. I'm concerned down the street from us in an apartment building, 4 apartments. He has a black container for each one, a green one, and they stretch on the front of the road, the edge of his party. He isn't gonna have room for a cardboard container also. They're gonna blow and dump. I think you need to think how many containers and the days. If I have to haul things out 3 days a week, I really need a good posted schedule to get this out this day before 6 a.m. and this out before this day, and then somehow get them hauled back. Now in my block, the neighbors, we try to get them out for the guy that is on a wheelchair. His wife has a walker. She cannot move any of the containers. So the neighbors try to make sure we get them out, get them back. They don't get dumped over. I think this has to be a concern. 30% of this town are seniors. We may not be able to push a 100-pound container full of 100 pounds of trash or whatever. I also pay for a cardboard paper collection. I give it to them free. But I pay for them. They pick it up off my porch, they empty it, they put it back on my porch. It isn't sitting out in the alley being knocked over, waiting a month. So I think you need to think of all those little extra details of the people in this town trying to move garbage containers. And I just talked to someone, I had a rental place next door. The renters moved out, they went back to Texas, left a mattress, some broken chairs, a bunch of other junk, sat there for a month. We hauled some of the garbage I put in my container. I couldn't touch the mattress. I didn't know you could call and make the city pick it up. Now in the new situation, who is going to contact those Texas renters to pay for the mattress, $5 for the chairs, $5 for this? You need to think of how to get this information out to everybody as you're doing it. So Thank you.
Thank you. There were some questions asked there, so we'll just ask staff to make a little note, and when we're done with public comment, come back to that issue of containerization of the cardboard. My understanding is there will not be a separate container, and also the information efforts, and how people can also have people pick up mattresses and big bulk items like that. Further public comment? Any other further public comment on item number 3? There's nobody online. No one else is coming forward. So I'm about to close public comment. We will close the public comment period. Okay, thank you very much. Staff now, or I'm staff. Yeah, well, actually, staff, if you could comment on Ms. Fergus's questions about containers for cardboard and public information, and also how people can pick up big bulky items.
So Mayor and Council, we would not have containers for the cardboard right now. We're just proposing it being on the curb. We would not go to another container unless we went to full-on recycling, and that would require the additional trucks. So at this point, it's just setting out the cardboard. There was an issue brought up with the apartment building, and we'll look into that because, apartment building would be commercial and should not have green barrels. So we'll look at that too. As far as the education piece, agreed, we need to get more information out about that bulky program. If no one knows, that's good information to have, so we will do that. But we also will be getting targeted information out. Lee Enterprises suggested stickers on the garbage cans and do different things. Because obviously, the social media aspect only hits a certain area of people, and we need to make this widespread so that everybody gets this information, whether it's mailers, targeted information to a household via stickers or other letters. That is our plan at this point. It will be an extensive outreach, but short term.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, public comments closed. I saw lots of hands. Councilmember Boyette, Shaw, Purington.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a phenomenon in my neighborhood called the wind, and it actually even blows over some of our garbage cans. Can I imagine people just stacking up cardboard outside? It'll all be in the neighbor's yard or down the street. Any thoughts about, anything about how we should bundle that so that the wind, it would pick it up?
We would need to change city code. Kyle, do you have any bundling requirements?
Not for cardboard. So not for cardboard. My recommendations, we have bundling requirements for brush, branches, things like that. But my recommendations, if you have a bigger box with a bunch of smaller boxes, put the smaller boxes down, break them down, put them down down into the bigger box. I keep a rock kind of like into my driveway. So if I do set something light out, I just kind of set it on top, and 2 years later, it's still there. So the crews haven't taken it yet. That's going to be a challenge, and we're going to have to get creative to figure out how we keep it in place. Or you need to evaluate, can I hold on to it for another month, or can I do something else with it? There's been times where the wind's been so strong, you're right, they do blow over the carts. I just keep my cart in the garage, and I'll set it out next week, and I'll figure out what to do with that extra week's worth of garbage. You just kind of have to get creative, think outside the box.
Think outside the box. Okay. Councilmember Shaw, Councilmember Purington.
Thank you. I'd like to move ahead with a motion. Can you pull back up the slide that you had? I can't remember if staff was recommending a change to option A that needed to be included, or maybe you can just tell me. Okay, that was it. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead. So having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the resolution establishing collection, disposal, and landfill fees for FY 2024 as recommended by staff, which is option A.
Okay, is there a second? Councilmember Gulick. Okay, so that is the motion on the floor. Did you want to speak to your motion?
I would like to speak to it. as the entire time we've been having this conversation, the thing that I can't stop thinking about is when I was first out of college, I went and taught in Japan for a couple of years, and their garbage system is so complex and way beyond the scale of anything we're talking about. There were like 17 different categories. They all had different days. Everything had to be in certain bags. All the recycling had to be sorted out individually. This is just so minimal compared to that I think our citizens can understand it. They will get it. It's good for the city. It makes sense for public works. So I would urge us to support this option.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Gillick, did you want to speak to the second or?
Just to say that one of the, when if we have the equal level of subsidization of the two options, A and B, A is still preferable in terms of extends the life of our landfill in terms of it saves us costs, avoids costs of having to expand our cells in a given time. So, and I think also to Councilmember Rupsis's point, I think there are other benefits that it makes sense to subsidize. So I do support, I appreciate the staff bringing forward option A, and I seconded it, the motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Purington.
Thank you. In response to Mrs. Ferguson, there is an option. There's where you don't have to roll out, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you don't have to roll out your containers to the street, that the city will actually come to your door and get it at no extra charge. You will just be charged. They used to charge more for it, but I think it was last year, started doing that. So you don't have to take your trash can from your garage or wherever you have it out to the street. The city, if you have to have medical verification, which, you get from your doctor. And if there's any questions about that, you can either visit with one of these two gals and they can explain that a little bit better to you. But there is that option, that was intended for our seniors particularly. And also, whenever the question was who pays for the renters when they just leave their junk behind, to me, that's the property owner. I mean, they have a deposit. That's their job. It's not really the city's job to go and just know to do that. They would actually bill the property owner for any of those extras. In regard to the motion before us, and I was just talking with the mayor and the city administrator between what is the easiest thing? What is the most simplified way that we can collect trash and do it effectively, efficiently, with not the highest cost to our citizens? I'm not sure that I like this bulky item thing, this 1 to 5, 6 to 10. I don't know how you're going to figure that one out. And I think if we can take that off of the resolution until we can come up, or till you can come up with a better plan of how to do that, how to measure it, because I think that was one of the things that you said was still not clear to you. I would also like to make a substitute motion that, or maybe it's just a friendly amendment, that we would not charge for a second green barrel. And I don't know if that's something that would be.
I didn't add it just because I feel like it's simpler if you just make the amendment and then we can vote it up or down. I would support it though.
Okay. And that'd be absolutely fine if you want to propose that as an amendment.
Okay, I will propose, go ahead and go with option A, at least at this point, and not charge for the second green barrel.
I'll second the amendment.
Thank you very much. So there's a proposed amendment, just a simple change, no charge for the second green barrel. Discussion on the proposed amendment.
I think that was primarily discussed. Jennifer said it wasn't going to make any difference to them. It's 3 months out of the year. So I just don't think that those people that need a second green barrel, they need a second green barrel.
And can I just ask for some clarification on the time period? If you get a second green barrel at $4.50 a month, is it a 12-month charge or is it a seasonal charge that's less than that?
Good point.
So the green barrel, you keep it year round, so the charge is would be year-round if we did that. And it's actually a 9-month season. It's really long, our greenways. So we go from April through the end of November. I will clarify on the bulk item, just because that came up. Bulk item was a charge that we had before, so we've carried that through. The bulk items, we have a special truck that comes through, and those are for the bigger things. If you need a sofa, you need big items like that, you call in now. We already have that program in place. Only about 50 people used it last year.
Okay, any further discussion on the proposed amendment? Councilmember Joy, Councilmember Tricky.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will support the amendment to not charge for the second green barrel. But as a gardener, I can say, I don't know why you would want to throw away that green gold. You need to get that on your garden and your flower beds. I can go out and dig in my soil and get the biggest night crawlers. If I could fish and actually catch a fish, I would be doing that right now. Because if you put your green on your garden, in your flower beds, you will have some really great night crawlers. So just an idea. Instead of throwing it away, put your green gold right back in your yard. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll hear from the president of the, or chairman, or whatever the title is, of the Amon Park Community Garden, I believe, Councilmember Tricky.
I will point
have
out.
that right?
Something like that, yeah. No. I will point out that Councilmember Joy is the one who's in charge of composting. We're already giving the green barrel for free, the first one, so I will not support giving them a second barrel for free, partially because, there is a real cost of, you've got 2 barrels there's a real cost of how many trips that are going to happen, so we let people have a second barrel for free. Well, the first barrel really isn't for free because it's built into the cost of the trash container, so this is basically giving a free service away to people who already, in order for them to be using it, they have to have a large lawn, they have to have a lot of trees. There's a lot of really nice things that are going on there, and they're basically asking the rest of us to subsidize getting rid of what they don't want hanging around in their yard. So I will not be supporting making 2 green barrels for free.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion on the proposed amendment before we proceed to a vote.
Mayor, I believe Council Member Neese has his hand up. You can't see it.
Very good.
but-
Thank you, Denise, for calling our attention to that. Councilmember Neese.
I apologize. I put my hand up before the amendment for a question, so I'll put it back up after the vote.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're ready to vote. This is only on the amendment to drop from the proposal the $4.50 per month charge for the second green barrel. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, voting in opposition, Councilmember Tricky. All others voting in favor, so motion passes. Now we have back to the underlying motion, now amended. Further discussion on the underlying motion. Councilmember Purington?
No, I'm thinking.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Councilmember Neese. Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm concerned about the recycling that we're getting into, only in the sense that, if we're going to get into a recycling program, I want to make sure the end product is being used. We heard from testimony that Earth First, I think it is the one that does it here. Now, make sure that the end product is being recycled. My concern is if we're spending a lot of money to pick up this recycled material, that it would just end up in not just either our landfill or some other landfill. And if we're going to be selling this or having to pay for someone to take it, we need to make sure this is a true recycling program. And if we find out that the vendor who is getting it from is not recycling it, that make sure that's in the, whatever agreement we have with them, that they have to make sure it's being used, or recycled, actually, for reuse. I think we need to make this simple. I don't know if this is really that simple. I'm a little concerned. I think if I heard correctly, they're gonna put the recycle day back on, or the cardboard recycle day back on the same day as your trash pickup. I think that's a good move. And I do believe that any trash, whether it's recycled trash or not, should be in a container. It's not that hard for you to put your cardboard in a container you pick up from Ace Hardware or Home Depot or some other place. That's the way it stays contained. It doesn't blow down the street for the neighborhood. So if the Public Works is going to have a program that actually makes sure the trash isn't laying on the ground and blowing down the street, this may be a program to support, but I have my reservations about it. I do have a question for staff because about when Kyle mentioned about the bundles, I forgot I was going to ask that earlier. Where in their rate program is that? So when people have their bundles, they used to put out, they'd have to do the trimmings on their trees and then put out their bundles in, small little bundles at less than 3 feet. Is that now going to be $5 per bundle to pick up?
So you're talking about things that are not in the yard waste container, correct?
Right.
So yeah, it would still be considered an extra pickup. If you can't put it in, if it's not suitable for your yard waste container, it's possibly it could fit in your regular container with your cardboard out of it. Or the other option would be to call us for the extra pickup.
Okay, so we're looking at $5 per bundle when someone has to trim bushes or something like that. It doesn't fit into the green barrel.
Jeff,
And then,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilor.
yeah, my other concern is that the neighbors will be paying for their neighbors' leaves that blow through the fall and things like that. So when you put up, I know we see lots of bags at the street in the fall when the leaves drop. And so my concern is that we're going to be charging our residents $5 per bag. And I want to make sure that that's not the case, that somehow residents are still going to be able to get their leaves picked up, put to the street, and without being charged $5 a bag.
Councilmember, or I'm sorry, Jennifer or Kyle, can you comment on that? My understanding is they would be charged unless they brought it to a, not centralized, but another drop-off location, assuming they can't put it in their green barrel. But the special situation of fall cleanup and leaf season, who would like to comment on that particularly sensitive issue? And related to that, would it be possible just to do a week or two of free leaf pickup? That becomes part of that question as well. So Jennifer.
So the drop boxes worked well, so we would definitely do that, but more of them because they worked maybe too well for what we were expecting. And then we could add in like a once a year just leaf program where we do collect it that one time for anything that you put out.
Okay, that's helpful to know. And then my other concern is once in a while we'll have pretty good storms here and trees fall, and again, lots of debris that, can't be hauled by a lot of different people, and it sits out at the street. So again, are they going to have to call for special pickups after storms to get this debris off the street that they've bundled?
Councilmember Neese, we have worked in the past with things, when we've had big storms come in and doing extra cleanup, and we would absolutely continue that going forward if we had something come through like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, further discussion, Councilmember Shaw.
Councilmember Owen reminded me to make sure that the motion was clear that it includes the delayed implementation date of 9/11.
Okay, thank you. That was the staff recommendation, so thank you for that clarification. Councilmember Purington.
So we kind of discussed this. You're going to put it out on bid on the recycling, the cardboard. And right now, they told you that it would be about $100 a ton. So you put it out to bid and it comes $200 a ton. What is the top amount that we can pay, still staying within this realm here and not using up all of our subsidy from the landfill? Do we have a parameter that we're working with, or are we just going to wait and see what the bid is? And then if we don't get what we want, then we're back to what?
Councilmember Purington, we'd have a couple of alternatives. If the price came in at $500 a ton for some reason, something crazy, we could come back to council, tell you we can't afford this. We could take it to the landfill at that point and still do the cardboard, but just take it to the landfill, or we could store it until market conditions changed and rebid it at that point. So there is that opportunity to store that cardboard and just pick it up as planned.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? We need to proceed to a vote pretty soon. Any further discussion? Okay, so we'll move to a vote. Hopefully the motion is clear. It's to adopt staff recommendation, delayed implementation date, amendment to drop the the second green barrel fee. If the motion is clear, if in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. So, and Councilmember Neese, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your vote.
Yeah, sorry, I said aye when's my.
Okay. All right, so the motion passes unanimously. That concludes item 3, kind of .0. There's still a 3A, and that's the landfill use agreement. Further presentation on that, Jennifer.
I don't have a presentation, I'm just here for questions.
Okay, and just to remind us what item 3A is, Council. This is the agreement with the county where they pay in order for people outside the city limits to be able to drop stuff off at the landfill. Councilmember Gulick?
I'm sorry, I didn't see if there was a question that you gave in terms of, just getting back to the issue of we have different rates for county versus city residents. What's our latest thought? Is there a way of just being able to look at someone's driver's license and type in their address and immediately it tells you yes or no, they're in the county or the city?
So right now, we're still asking city or county and asking them to show some kind of ID or utility bill or something to prove that they're city, and that's how we're doing it. We have looked into different technologies, but have not implemented anything at this point.
And just to clarify, Jennifer, that's only if you exceed certain amounts, right? The whole point of this agreement is for the run-of-the-mill person in the county not to have to pay those charges.
Correct, but we ask every time because the people in the county that go in and don't have to pay, we need to know those people so that we include that refuse in the next year's calculation.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Tidswell and Councilmember Boyette?
It's funny we just had this conversation. Jennifer, I'm doing some remodeling at the house, and between August of 22 and June of 23, I've been to the dump 11 times. I've been to the landfill 11 times. Not one single time have I been asked city or county. Not one single time.
I would like to say that's because we gave them all your pictures. And
I would love for you to be able to say that.
we will look into that and address it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've had similar experience. Councilmember, recognize Councilmember Boyette and then Councilmember Neese.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate, we went there with a 4-horse trailer, and the guy said, where are you from? He said, city. We have to change the program where you actually look at a driver's license or something. I mean, it's obscene where people just drive in and say, I'm city, and then nothing happens.
Yep, we will definitely look into that.
Thank you, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. This is along the same lines as well, but I think it's more than just the city dump. It's some of our city services like parks. Our Parks Department has a lot of county residents using our park services that they don't pay for other than through some fee services that are subsidized through our residents' taxes. So I think that this is something that we probably need to wrestle with and look at maybe a city card, just like a library card. You have your city card renewed every couple of years, and if you go to the dump, you have to show your city card. We're talking about a recreation center that's going to be online soon, that you got your city card, you get your city rates at the rec center. So I think this is something that we're offering a lot of services that people are living and moving in the county, coming from other areas. And, our citizens of Billings, we need to make sure that we're giving our citizens the discount that they're paying through their taxes, so.
Thank you, Councilmember Joy. Councilmember Rowan?
Thank you. Just a suggestion, a little decal that goes on the windshield up in the corner. And maybe, who knows, we used to do that back in the old days.
Or barcodes, I think, is the current scanning capability. Councilmember Rowan?
I don't mean to belabor a point, but do any of these out-of-city haulers separate out cardboard or green waste or anything like that?
Republic is one of our contracted haulers, and I know they also have the recycling option for their customers, so they do have that, but they don't require their customers to actually separate that out.
So just very quickly to the last matter, Kyle had mentioned that he could potentially put together some information for us on the feasibility of doing some more composting, including that cardboard waste, and I would like to see that. Not urgent, but I would like to see that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you. I move to approve the landfill use agreement with Yellowstone County as recommended by staff.
Second.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Joy has the second. Would either of you like to speak to your motion or second? No, they say. Further discussion on the motion. The motion is for approval. Before we proceed to a vote. Okay, seeing nothing, if in favor of the motion for approval, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously, and that concludes item 3. Brings us to item number 4, zone change 1027. Our zoning coordinator, Nicole Cromwell, is our presenter. It's going to take her a minute to bring up the PowerPoint.
Fights me. Did you want to have the clerk read the?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. Denise, would you read item number 4?
I thought you had it handled. Okay, so public hearing and first reading ordinance for zone change 1027, generally located south and west of the intersection of East Lane and Elysian Road. Zoning Commission recommends approval and adoption of the 10 criteria.
Thank you, City Clerk. This is a zone change for an existing plan development that was originally created in the county and recently annexed. Most of this plan development area was recently annexed to the city. And part of the property was also sold to Elysian School for their expansion. So the proposal is to amend that plan development agreement to basically add new owners who are bound by that agreement, indicate in that plan development agreement that the city's landscaping standards apply to all the property within the city limits, not the old county landscaping code, but keep the underlying zoning of the highway commercial and the controlled industrial as those were originally part of the plan development, and keep all of the prohibited uses and restrictions in place. So the zoning commission conducted their public hearing on June 6th and received the staff report recommendation of approval and testimony from the applicant's agent, IMEG, Anna Vickers, and they are recommending approval to you. The uses allowed in those archive zoning districts would continue forward. So for example, in the highway commercial zone district that's archived, multifamily uses are allowed. Part of this amendment includes expanding that underlying highway commercial zoning to cover more area because there is a developer interested in building a mixed housing choice neighborhood directly west of Elysian School. There will remain those special buffer zones around Elysian School to eliminate uses like manufacturing and warehousing and wholesale services so that that school use is protected now and in the future. This is the subject property, so it doesn't include the entire group of parcels covered by the planned development. It includes the furthest west parcel, which is still the Tibetan turf, the big yellow bag, dirt and turf farm that exists there on South Frontage Road. But it does include most of the land to the east of that location. The existing school property, not in this planned development, is already zoned public 2. And here's an aerial of the subject property showing the surrounding zoning and uses. Here's the original planned development master plan. So it had 2 zones, highway commercial and controlled industrial, and then this special buffer area right around the school. And this is the way that zoning lays out right now based on property lines. So the school bought 2 chunks of land, and their underlying zoning of that chunks of land is still highway commercial. So the update will put those 2 pieces of Elysian School land in a public 2 zone. And let's go back. And then we will reduce the controlled industrial area and expand the highway commercial area to a dividing line that's further west. And you just approved a minor subdivision that kind of follows these new zoning boundaries. So lots 4 and 5 would be the underlying highway commercial zoning, and that's where that planned neighborhood would go. West of there on lots 1, 2, and 3, those would be the allowable controlled industrial uses, and we're processing the first building permit for a very large warehouse on one of those parcels. I can't remember which one. So things are moving quickly here. Here's a subject property from Elysian Road looking due south, and then south and west, and then directly west on Elysian Road, directly north across Elysian Road, and then northeast across Elysian, and of course the school, Elysian School, that's right there. This is if you drove down to the south end of this property on East Lane, this is the view of that kind of unbuilt road, but it provides access to the south end of these parcels. And then if you stood way on the far west corner of the property and looked east, you can see basically the extent of the parcel it's very large. Here's your zone change criteria, and all the findings from the zoning commission are in your staff report. But basically it does comply with the growth policy. It helps this developer and these property owners continue forward with this protective plan development zone with some new regulations. And again, here's the existing zoning and the proposed zoning of the property, and I'd be happy to take any of your questions.
Thank you very much. Nicole, questions for Nicole?
Mayor?
Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to let you know, being remote, I could not see any of their presentations, so I don't know what was presented other than what's spoken.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully you have your packet. The presentation was consistent with what we had in our packet. But if you
See it
have any
now?
specific questions, please feel free to see any of it. Can you now see Nicole's screen, the PowerPoint, Councilmember Denise?
I can, yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
So there you can see the proposed zoning. But feel free to ask any specific questions if you have them, Councilmember Denise.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else for Nicole before we open up for public hearing on this item? There are no other Councilmember Purinton.
So Nicole, go back to, go back to the slide right before that, the existing zoning. So I was trying to understand the buffer issue that was in place with the existing zoning. So if you could explain the buffer again. And then it was my understanding that go to the proposed one now. So it's my understanding that the highway commercial is the one that they are wanting to use for some residential, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so could you explain the buffer now that?
Well, there are different restricted uses
Right.
for each area were spelled out in the original plan development. And the buffer zone A, which I'm going to go back. Oh, I'm going to have to go back several slides to get to that original document. There's two areas. One is for the original underlying zoning of highway commercial, and it's shown in that dashed line on the map. All the other area is also a restricted use zone, but it's called restricted use zone B. So there are two different ones here. And if you look at the modified agreement, those same restrictions apply, and they reference the underlying zoning. So when that boundary moves, those restricted uses move with it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for Nicole? Don't see any, so we'll open up for public comment. And Nicole, do we have any sort of presentation by a developer or?
The applicant's agent is here.
Okay.
Mayor, I did have another question for Nicole.
Okay. Before we get to that, Councilmember Denise has a question. Go ahead, Councilmember Denise.
Nicole, real quick, we learned this in the last PD we looked at a couple of weeks ago. The PD there were some changes in there that were not really discussed. I think Councilmember Ripsis or Owen discovered that some timing. So in other words, there was changes to the PD other than what were being presented in a presentation. I don't see a red line version of the changes in the PD. Is that something that we can require going forward so that when we know all the changes that are being made in the PD so that we fully understand all the changes? Because this is a contract that we're making changes to. And I just want to make sure there's nothing that hasn't been discussed. And I believe in the last PD, it was written by the developer, and that stuff kind of came out during our meeting.
Right. Typically, there's several times there's back and forth between staff and the applicant. The applicant always writes their own PD. City staff doesn't write it for them. Sometimes they don't have access to the original document in an editable form. So what they'd have to do is take a scanned PDF and convert it, the recorded document, and then convert it to an editable document.
Right.
We could certainly require that as a policy internally, especially when you get to multi-page. Like we have plan development agreements that are 100 pages long, going line by line on that. Sometimes it's very difficult to follow. We can do a compare document process that'll turn up, where changes have happened by comparing the two documents through a software program. But typically, I go through a couple of iterations of their changes before it gets into an application. And in fact, I went back and forth with Ms. Vickers from IMEG a couple of times to make sure that we weren't missing items from the application, from the plan development. There was like a paragraph that ended and it didn't continue on to the next page. I was like, I think you're missing a page here. Where's that page? So, I mean, we try to catch as many mistakes as we can before it gets to your desk.
Yeah, I would hope that we have maybe a requirement in the future that we have something that we can be assured that there is nothing missed, as well as there's no changes that happened that we didn't, that were slipped under the rugs, so to speak.
And speaking only for myself, I would certainly endorse always seeing a red line. When we're talking about changes, it's almost impossible without that. So I would encourage that as an internal policy. Okay, thank you very much. Nothing else for Nicole. Is this Ann with us? Did you have anything that you'd like to comment on?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Anna Vickers with IMEG 175 North 27th Street in Billings. Just following protocol there. I want to say thank you to Nicole and staff. They've been very great helping us through this process. I mean, this is an older document. We had to go several iterations with all of the parties involved. So we've met with the school 4 or 5 times, and we also had our public meeting. And then we also talked to Viking as well as the majority landholder, which is Development 55 currently and was formerly owned by Viking. But essentially what you're seeing is a desire to have residential expanded, and residential is allowed within that Zone A highway commercial. And in order to make sure that the school felt protected, we continued to use all of the same restrictions. And so that's why none of it has changed coming into any of the new city zoning code. It's just, we want to restrict exactly what the school wants to restrict, and we want to continue to protect the school. Just expanding that boundary out, which kind of compensates for how they've expanded their property. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Council Member Puritan?
Thank you. Just a quick question. What was the reasoning to keep the highway commercial instead of going to a residential zoning?
Yeah, so essentially the school just wants to have everything as much the same as they can. So they were actually under the impression that everything to the west of them or east of them is all residential. And whenever they found out that this agreement, they had outgrown the agreement, we're just trying to keep it as clean as possible without having to have the whole school board want to get into all the individual uses allowed within residential. So it's just more or less to allow for the uses being adjacent, being more commercial. So if someone bought it and they would be allowed those restricted uses that are okay with the school, but also the residential if they wanted to.
Okay, any other questions? Don't see any. Thank you very much. Okay, this is a public hearing, so we'll open up for public hearing on item number 4. Do we have any public comment? If so, please come to the podium. No one's coming to the podium here, and there is no one online, so we will close the public hearing period and look to council. Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken testimony, I move to approve first reading ordinance for zone change 1027 and adopt the findings of the 10 criteria as recommended by the Zoning Commission.
Thank you very much. Second by Councilmember Purington. Motion is for approval. Discussion on the motion before we proceed to a vote. No one is raising their hand. No one is online. Councilmember Neese, no comment. So we'll proceed to a vote. So if in favor of the motion for approval, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes item number 4. Brings us to item number 5. Denise, would you read item number 5?
Resolution requiring or canceling a municipal primary election on September 12, 2023.
Thank you very much. Gina, Councilmember Tricky.
Yes, I am going to be recusing myself from this conversation.
Because?
Because the election that we're talking about here includes me as one of the people who's running.
Very good. All right, thank you for that clarification. City Attorney Dahl.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this was placed on the agenda sort of as a just in case kind of thing. There was a suggestion previously by Councilmember Chiriqui that, or I think it was Councilmember Chiriqui, that if for some reason the election administrator decided to indicate that a primary was not necessary, that the suggestion was that council move to approve a resolution requiring a primary. Frankly, at this point, it's kind of a moot point based on the determination of the election administrator, which we didn't know at the time this memo was complete. And so now, of course, we have full information. And the options as stated, the alternatives as stated in the staff memo, actually now include a third alternative of essentially not doing anything. And that is because the language of the statute requires that there be a primary because of the number of candidates in one of the wards. And that's Ward 3. I believe there are six candidates that have filed in that ward. In the remainder of wards and also the municipal court judge office election, there are only 2 candidates, so there is obviously not a primary necessary in any of those. So if for some reason council wanted to require a primary of those other 5 offices, the ones where there are only 2 candidates, council could certainly do that if you wanted to for some reason. But if council does not take any action tonight, there will be a primary election for Ward 3. That will be the office that is on the ballot on September 12th. And the election administrator advised in her letter, which I sent to you all today, that it's my understanding that she is not placing any of those offices on the ballot because there's no need. They will all progress to the general. So with that, that's really all I have, is to just kind of update you with the information. So.
Okay, so my understanding is there's nothing for us to do unless you want to have a primary for 2 people. Councilmember Rupsis.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, the way I read it, I thought it said.
Is your mic on?
Sorry, I missed the button. Thank you. We don't have to pass a resolution to not have the primaries in for the 5 wards.
You don't have to, no. There is language in the stat in the code that says the following. If the election administrator determines that a primary election must be held, the election pursuant to subsections 2A and 2B or 2B, the election administrator shall conduct the primary election only for the nonpartisan offices that have a sufficient number of candidates that have filed to be elected to that office. So in how that applies here is there are 6 candidates in Ward 3, so she shall conduct an election for that one. And the remainder, there's no need for it. And that's what she notified us of in the letter.
All right, thank you for helping me.
Councilmember Rupsis?
Yeah, thank you for helping me through that. Does this mean that our cost for the election will essentially be 1/5 of what we thought it might be, that 105,000, or is it, thereabouts?
I
We
don't have the answer to that. I don't think so, but Chris.
Yeah, Councilmember Rupsis, Mayor and Council, that is my understanding. I wasn't able to get a confirmation of that today, but that, since we pay, as I understand, what we pay is per ballot, and the fact that we're only doing 1 ward out of 5, it is my presumption that, yes, we're talking roughly 1/5 the cost.
Councilmember Boyette?
So, Gina, what it really says is if we just say we're going to walk away right now, that the ballot goes out for Ward 3 and we pay the money.
Right.
We don't need to do anything.
You don't need to do anything because that's what's going to happen if you don't take any action. Yeah.
Okay, any further questions for Gina? There will not be a public hearing on this item, nor.
Yes, I have a question.
Councilmember Bernice.
Thank you. Gina, so are we going to make a motion to remove this from the agenda so it's not addressed, or is that what you recommend?
You, actually, it might just be cleaner if you just make a motion to reject both of the resolutions. You can take it off the agenda if you want. I don't think it really matters too much. You just, you cannot take action. You can make a clear motion that you're going to reject both resolutions, or you can make a motion to just simply remove this. But since we've had a presentation and you've heard it, it's not really been removed from the agenda at this point.
Yeah, my recommendation would not be to remove it because obviously it's here and we've had this discussion. The only question is whether we just move on. Is there anybody who would like to make an affirmative motion to do nothing, or are we content to just move on? Councilmember Purington.
I move to approve a resolution requiring a municipal primary election on September the 12th, 2023 in Ward 3.
Okay, and Gina, can you just, we'll get into discussion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
By Councilmember Tisdale. So that was an affirmative motion to move ahead with a primary. Is there any basis for our to do that?
It's not necessary, that motion, or that resolution's not necessary, because even if that resolution is approved, that is what will happen.
Right.
Okay, so
So,
for what it's worth.
I thought we weren't going to cancel it. Or
Yeah, not canceling it, it's just, it would happen anyway, so, but, okay. Not to get in its way, I guess, is what the motion really is. Any discussion, and there was a second, motion a second. Councilmember Neese.
Yeah, I'd make a substitute motion to just table this, and that way it's done.
Okay, so the substitute motion, just to table it, move on, take no other formal action. Is there a second? Councilmember Boyette says he'll do that. Any discussion now on the substitute motion, which would have the effect of just moving on? Councilmember Shrieky.
I do want to make it clear why I asked this to be on the agenda, and in fact, on the agenda every 2 years on this date.
Well,
No, he's tabling it, so I'm really out talking about
but my understanding is you're clarifying your recusal. You're not trying to influence the motion.
I am not trying to influence the motion. I'm just trying to point out that the reason I asked this to be on here this year is that if we had had it on the agenda as a standing item every 2 years, then we would have been able to discuss this 2 years ago when we had one race with 4 people and two races with 3.
Mayor, point of order.
Okay, yeah, Councilmember Neese.
When someone recuses themselves from a discussion, they're not supposed to be discussing. So if someone's discussing during the motion, then they need to either vote or not. And so because he's joined in the discussion on a motion before us, I believe he needs to vote on this. You can talk to your the parliamentarian, but they've already violated by discussing after they recuse themselves.
Gina, the question has been, does Councilmember Tricky need to vote on the motion? The motion that's currently before you is just to table this and move on.
well, Councilmember Cherokee did indicate he wanted to recuse himself, and therefore he should not have participated in any of the discussion.
Okay, and I thought he was going to clarify the basis for his recusal, but I was not really tuned in to what he was saying. So, okay, Councilmember Neese, I'm not sure there's any basis for requiring him to vote, so we will not require him to vote. We will honor his recusal, and he won't vote. So, are we ready to vote on the substitute motion? Okay, nobody's objecting to that. So if in favor of the substitute motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. So with the exception of Councilmember Purington voted in the opposition, that motion passes. This item is removed from further discussion. And we move on to public comment on non-agenda items. So is there any public comment on items not on our agenda tonight?
Wesley Dunn, 832 Dorothy Lane. Mayor, council, thank you. I don't understand we have two of these pieces of paper. There's one back there you can sign in, and that's this one up here. It's always put up here. It just seems like it's a waste of tree to me. But anyways, getting back to where I left off on the water needs, and yeah. So I believe I left off at where there was an interview with Mr. Dave Mumford. Mumford said the project will cost $120 million. It will include a water treatment plant. Right now, Billings has one water treatment plant, and Mumford said it's 100 years old. The water treatment plant is expected to be finished in 2024. Dave's not here no more, but he did lie to the citizens, and he deceived the citizens. So the other article was written by Michael Foth, and he said he caught up with Lewis Ingalls. At the time, Lewis was the utility systems engineer with the city. And he answered some questions about the new body of water that will occupy around 160 plus acres. Like I've said before, the new reservoir to be named West End Reservoir. The reservoir will become Billings' primary freshwater source. The current system, built in 1914, is severely lacking storage capacity and can only provide 8 to 10 hours of water. Well, we've seen that. Mayor, I don't have to go there again, but should there be a supply issue, it's more cost effective for the city to build this new reservoir than it is to try and salvage and upgrade the old one. So we got a recreation center. Not that I'm against that. Like I said, I'm all for progress, but where's the water going to come from to supply that recreation center? It's a lot of water. The pipeline serving the reservoir will be able to run up to 30 million gallons of water per day, more than enough to handle the water needs of a growing Billings. So I have just a little bit. Right now, y'all keep letting things come into the city, annexing this, annexing that, letting people build this and build that. But right now, we don't have the utilities to keep letting all that happen. So planning, come on, we got to put a cap on it. We got to stop somewhere, and we got to have important conversations. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Amber Dunn, Dorothy Lane. Welcome to Billings, or it's known as the dumping grounds by all other parts of Montana. I have recently met a lovely couple that live on our street. They have lived in a few different places around the state, eastern Montana and Missoula. In living in these places, the husband worked with law enforcement. As he worked, he found out that most of this state looks at Billings as the dumping ground for their trash. I see it like this. You put so much of our taxes and our budget into helping homeless and criminals. Why? Why not put a cap on it and find a solution to get them out of your city? They are littering your parks now. 2 Moon Park is littered at all hours of the day. They are behind Jersey Mike's, hiding in trees. They are laying outside of the liquor store. I took a picture of one. If you'd like to see it, let me know. It's ridiculous. I shared a letter with you from Flathead County when they asked City Council to stop giving money to homeless programs because it was destroying the city and county. Why are you openly allowing this to continue to happen here? I understand there will always be homeless, but seriously, if you don't feed them all, then they all will not stay. If you cut funding, word of mouth will get around and these people will leave because help has been cut down to help fewer people. They stay because it's free. I know I don't work and struggle every day of my life to fund things like this. Most working people have to work in order to survive. So if you stop feeding and housing them, then you're forcing them to either work or leave. It's common sense. It tells you if things are free, why work for it? We all love free things. If you see free food samples at the store, do you take one? Anything free to people, they run to it. It's basic human psychology. If you build it and pay for it, they will come and stay. It's funny how there are shows out there like South Park. It's dumb, but they hit the nail on the head when it comes to homeless taking over towns. Watch it and see what I mean. It's exactly what's happening here. One last thing. We have been hearing from neighbors on Dorothy down the opposite end of the street that since the house next to ours is out of commission, the drug activity has slowed way down on their side of the street to almost non-existent. There is still a drug house in one of the streets that back up to the trail. They do a few drug deals at night on the trail and in the alleys behind the houses on Dorothy. But since people are aware of it now in the neighborhood, they watch out for it more. We called in one of them that wanted to leave a stolen truck down the road. The entire thing was a dumpster fire and how the cops handled it, but that's a whole nother story. I just wanted to let you know that people 10 houses or more down the street from us have seen a difference on our street when it comes to drugs and drug activity. So once again, I guess we're lying, and yet the liar still has a job. Good job, you guys, in spending our money and holding people accountable. Mutual? Clearly it wasn't.
Thank you. Any further comment on items not on our agenda? No one is coming forward, so we'll close that. Move on to council initiatives. I believe we have something along those lines. Council Member Shrieky.
So I shared with you the document on Friday and last week as well. Basically, I'm going to move to have the proposal that was sent to us by Amanda Stonerock placed onto a work session so that the COC and the SAC and the other partners can present their proposal, and we can decide whether or not we want to do anything, move it to a business session or anything like that.
Okay. Councilmember Rupp, so that was a motion, formal motion, to add this to a future agenda, and that agenda not being specified, I guess, for an exact date, right? So that's to be determined by staff.
Is that this? No, they're two separate. Okay.
Oh.
No, that's mine.
Oh.
Okay, so those are separate. And then Councilmember Rupsis, and you have the second on that. Okay. And would you like to speak to your motion and second?
I'm just doing this because I think I just want to see what they actually have. I think it's a good opportunity for us to find out exactly what our partners are up to and the details and what they see as the next pressing needs.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Rupsis?
I feel the same way. I don't know that I'm ready to support the proposal, but I think it's worth having the partners in here to talk to us about it, and so at least we can stay informed and make an informed decision, at some future point. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Discussion on or questions on the motion before we proceed to a vote? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. If the motion is clear, if in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay.
Nay.
Voting in opposition, I heard Councilmembers Owen, Tidswell, Purington, and Boyette. All other council members, and Councilmember Neese, you voted in opposition?
That's correct.
Okay, so that was Tidswell, Purington, and Boyette, and Neese, so 5. All other members voting in favor. So the motion passes, albeit narrowly, 6-5. Okay, and Councilmember Trucchi, you said you had something else?
No, I don't.
Oh,
Councilmember Joy does.
Councilmember Joy. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you. I've been on council for so long, and this is my first initiative. I feel like I should take lessons from Councilmember Tricky, who has one every other week, and always so complicated. This one is, it's my first one. Actually, we've raised, Mobilize the Magic City has raised $9,070. And the FY23 Council Contingency Fund still has money in it that was not expended. And I'm coming to council to ask if basically council is interested in helping our fundraising by doing a roughly $1 to $1 match. One of the things I want to say about this is that it lines with our council initiatives in terms of public safety, and public art is really consistent with SEPTED principles in terms of graffiti. It still amazes me that the artwork that's been put in under the 6th Street underpass in that area still has not been tagged after all of these years. It's incredible. And so what I'm doing is just bringing this forward. It's consistent with our growth policy in terms of strong neighborhoods. The art hubs that will be put may be in a park or they'll be in a public right-of-way. So I want to clarify, the work that's being done is to try and make a transparent system, process for artists to come forward for public art. If you put a mural on your building, that's private property. This doesn't pertain to private property at all. It's simply those things that go in the public right of way or in a park, something that is city controlled. So we've done our fundraising, but the thing I really love is that every time I have been in and out with public engagement for this, it's fantastic what people are saying and really commenting about this. I spent 3 hours at the summer fair, and granted that is an art-oriented event, but kids were making art projects from found objects, basically things from the thrift stores, and painting, and they were so happy. Really, really positive public outreach. I only spoke to 2 people who didn't want to come and take a survey that we had, which is really, we were trying to gauge what benefit the public thinks that public art can do for our community, and also providing comment on what their vision for public art in Billings would be. And the reason they didn't is because they don't live in Billings. Really positive. I've been over and over in different areas of engagement. It's been really, really nice. The one thing I would say about fundraising for this particular project is that, one, it's not associated with any one person. So if there are 3 the art hubs could be in 3 wards, and as we expand our neighborhood bikeways, that will encompass every ward. It isn't one person's project. It isn't associated with the mayor or anything like that. And it's only a one-time fundraising thing. Once you get done, well, I mean, it's not like ongoing.
I'm against this.
It's not ongoing. I mean, we're not the symphony. We're not going to have music next year. So anyway, that's my rambling little explanation. So there you go.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Boyette. Okay. Okay, just, Councilmember, can I just ask a procedural question or a factual question, and we'll turn it to more substantive questions. But the initiative is to put this on a future agenda, to use fiscal year 23 dollars that have not been spent, but we're now only a few days before the end of the year. So
No, it's to direct staff to do it.
Well, my question is how, once we're beyond the fiscal year, there are no fiscal year 23 dollars. We're into the next fiscal year. So more accurately, wouldn't we be using dollars in the fiscal year 24 that are in reserve because they weren't spent in 23?
Well, that's a highly technical question, and we need Director Zeller here.
Yeah. Chris, what's that? So, Chris, can you comment on that, the timing issue here?
Yeah, if you take action and we sign whatever we need to sign, it'll come out of this fiscal year. If it if you take the action tonight. If the action is not taken in this next fiscal year, the money won't be spent, and we'll use it out of the addition that went to reserve, if that's what's directed by your initiative. Either way, it spends the same dollars, either out of the current fiscal year or the next fiscal year, based on your direction.
Okay. Just want to raise that issue. There were hands. Who would like to comment? Councilmember Owen.
So I think I was actually going to start with the same issue as you, Mayor. I mean, obviously, we could either choose to grant authority in fiscal year '24 to spend reserves from fiscal year '23, or we could just use the fiscal year '24 council reserve. I think we know that we cut general fund reserve levels pretty tight in the budget cycle, both for fiscal year '23 and then the projections for '24. So I'm wondering if you'd be open to amending it to say either fiscal year '23 or fiscal year '24 council contingency, just to make sure that if we do in fact slice those reserves from '23 very close, that we just have the flexibility to do '24.
That's perfectly okay. I spoke to Director Zeller about this, and, I spoke to Director Zeller about this, and then he deserted me at the last moment to answer questions, of course. Whatever, that's totally flexible. It's just meant to help us so that we can direct more of our energies towards really implementing these hubs and moving forward without a lot of time spent in fundraising for it. But if you choose to vote against it, I'll be out there busting my butt, raising $10,000, so whatever. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Puritan, Councilmember Owen, did you have anything else?
No, I'm.
Okay.
I think Councilmember Ripsis had his hand up.
Yeah, Councilmember Puritan, Councilmember Ripsis,
So,
and Councilmember Bernice.
so I guess my question is, there's not a timeliness on whatever the projects would be. And if this is primarily a fundraising opportunity versus council putting money into it.
No, I'm asking for council to put money into it, basically a dollar-to-dollar match. So we've raised basically $9,070, and so that's just council acknowledging that this is something that the city wants to do. It's the largest grant that was given to any city, any municipality in the state of Montana. It's a unique opportunity for us. We've never had one of these grants before, and I really think it's an opportunity for council to say, yeah, we put our stamp of approval on this. If you don't, I'll just go out and fundraise the money without that, but it allows us to focus more on implementing the art projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ripsis.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a technical question. Are we allowed to just say, go spend this money tonight, or does it have to be on like a consent agenda for the next meeting or something?
My understanding is this is a motion to put it on a future agenda, because it hasn't been noticed.
Because that's not what Councilmember Joy said. She said, just go spend it. So I just wanted to be clear about what we're saying.
Well, if this is another technical issue, oh my goodness, I should have done my homework on this completely. I think I skipped my hour of study last night. If it's usually to direct staff to do it. That is usually the motion for an initiative. It usually isn't to put it back on the agenda for a future meeting. It's usually to direct staff to do that. That's how we did it with the USS Billings. If you recall, we used contingency fund money for 2 or 3 years in a row to fund things that were expenses for the USS Billings. And I believe we just directed staff to do that. Thank you.
And Gina, maybe you can comment. I think the concern is that this hasn't ever been noticed for the public, and so that's the reason for putting on a future agenda and having a future vote. But that would be my concern. Gina, can you comment on the notice issue?
Sure, and I think Chris was just going to say this, but council can direct staff to take certain actions. In this particular case, this amount is within Chris's signing authority to do. So if council was to approve this now, Chris, the city administrator could take this action. It wouldn't need to come back before council. If council wants to make the motion to put it on a future agenda, then that certainly can happen. But the action it takes here to direct staff could direct staff to actually follow through on
So the fact
this.
this wasn't on an agenda is not a barrier to that, in your opinion?
No, because if council, I guess the city administrator routinely takes action and expends funds that are within his signing authority.
Okay. Okay. All right, and so just to clarify, because I was talking about putting on a future agenda, I don't want to create something inconsistent with what the movement was, which was just to approve it now, is what I'm hearing. So I got lots of hands. And Councilmember Bernice. Councilmember Bernice, I'm just going to, I'd recognize you before, but our city administrator, I think, want to come on this particular issue. So if we can ask him to do that, then we'll go to Councilmember Bernice. And then also Councilmember Owen and Councilmember Owen. Councilmember Chris?
Mayor Cole and City Council, the other component of this is, and this is an if you're directing to use what's budgeted and your contingency, there's real clarity to what action you want taken. There's a budget, there's a line item that includes a contingency. It's used, you direct how it gets spent. It's in the budget and it's within my signing authority. We can make it as formal as you want to make it going forward, or in this case, or as simple as being clear what action you taken, and that's the direction I would take tonight. So that's also different than just saying, oh, well, we just come up with something brand new we want to spend money on out of wherever. It's within the city administrator's authority. No, you're saying, actually, here's the fund I want you to take it out of, and that is a contingency fund of your control. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Bernice and Councilmember Rowan?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't there, so I didn't see the initiative. Janice, unless you had sent it off earlier, sorry, I did not. I looked through emails, didn't see it. So I don't have enough information for me to decide whether or not I would support, spending the money now. I'm not sure what this is, what they're going to do fully. And so I would support probably at least taking a look at it, see what it is, if it came back to us. But I'm concerned. I am concerned procedurally wise, using initiatives, they get announced, they come back. I think in these cases, the USS, the Billings, when we were doing that, that was a project that was prior approved. It's been going on for quite some time, and some funding was spent out of the council contingency. It was already a vetted project. This is not, and I think it needs to be vetted through a meeting, and then, as people said, if we could always do it a budget amendment out of reserves if that's his. But I also agree with Councilwoman Owen. We made the budget pretty tight, and so I would be concerned. I would like to see how it's going to impact the budget and some of the numbers that we're looking at prior, during the budget time.
Thank you, Councilor Bernice. Just so there's no doubt, it's a very short, as these things go, document. So I'm going to just go ahead and read it, so there's no question about that. It does identify Councilmember Joy as the councilmember proposing the initiative. The short name of the initiative is $10,000 grant match from Council Contingency Fund, fiscal year 23. This is on our standard form. The line for summary of proposed legislative action or staff action says, transfer of funds to mobilize the magic account by majority approved council vote. The city staff involved, Director Zeller, active transportation planner Elise Monat. Has council member communicated with these staff members? Answer yes. Estimate of approximate staff time required, 1 hour. Approximate timeline for staff department action, 1 week. Costs other than staff time, if any, reduced fiscal year 23 contingency fund by $10,000. Priority relative to existing initiatives, medium, high. Additional information or comments. The form says consistent with goal of traffic calming priorities of public safety, growth policy goal of strong neighborhoods. I move to direct staff to pay $10,000 council contingency funds to mobilize the Magic City fundraising. So that's what the form says that was distributed to us. There were other hands up. Councilmember Owen.
I think I disagree a little bit with what was said tonight, and I think maybe Chris tried to clarify it, but I just wanted to make sure we all understood. It is the case that $10,000 is within the city administrator's signing authority, but I don't think that's true out of the council contingency fund. I think that's ours to direct. So I don't think, I mean, while Chris could decide to spend 10,000 out of multiple funds, probably not ours without council direction. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Yes.
And I think, unfortunately, the language that's in ordinance is pretty clear, that the initiative process is for future action. The language, it's on the council form, it's in ordinance, it said it is limited to giving direction for future consideration of city council. So I think this has to go on the agenda for future. And that'll give us a chance to see if we have FY23 reserves or if we do it out of 24 council contingency. So my recommendation would be that we go on a future agenda.
Councilor Ripsis.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to offer a substitute motion to put Councilmembers Joy's grant match, $10,000 grant match initiative on the next business meeting consent agenda.
Okay, Councilmember Joy seconds that. Okay, motion, put it on a future consent agenda. July 10th, okay. Okay, yeah, discussion now on the substitute motion. Is there any? Before we proceed to a vote. Okay, so if the motion is clear, all those in favor of the substitute motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Very good. That concludes our initiatives. Sort of. Almost. Kind of. Councilmember Rosas.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to give everybody a heads up. I sent everybody an email, I think over the weekend. On July 10th, we had directed staff at the last business meeting to or at the last work session, to bring forward a bond resolution for the November ballot. We've been working on this a lot of times. There have been a ton of conversations. And as we all know with these things are said and promised and committed to, and if they're not written down, people's memories tend to be faulty. So my intention on July 10th is to introduce an initiative to have staff bring back a resolution within the next 30 days after that, with all the documentation of everything that we've talked about and all the groups have committed to, a lot of them that stood up last week and made commitments, agreements, those types of things. So you should have a copy of that. I'd be happy to spend time with each and every one of you talking through that, working with it, making any edits, corrections, additions, whatever you feel is necessary. Mayor's already offered to offer his lawyerly opinion on that, and I'm sure we'll get some good feedback there, but by July 10th, and so if you would like to set up that time, please just let me know, find a time to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that heads up. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. Tom, a quick question. I know I quick cruised that on my phone, so I didn't fully read that yet, but did that go out to the full public, or was it just individual?
No, at this point, it's just a draft, and I'm wanting to work with each and every one of you if you want to put any edits. And then when I send out the council initiative, I'll form with that document with any corrections or edits that you all would like. Then I'll send it to the council public email address so it goes into the public domain.
Okay, just real quick then, Mayor, if you don't mind, a quick question to Gina to see if that's something that needs to go to the public now. Is this being drafted, or should that wait until the final draft is done?
Gina, that was a question for you.
Yes, that was.
If I understood the question is whether this draft should go to the public, it seems to me that you should wait until you have an actual final draft, and that can be noticed up on an agenda, unless I misunderstood the question.
Yeah, my concern is all the council members have a copy of a working document that the public doesn't have access to, and it's being worked on and changed and discussed behind the scenes and not in the public forum. And so each of the council members, through some one way or another, is working on a document that the public doesn't have access to yet.
Well, frankly, I don't have the same concern about that because it will be presented to the public and it will be noticed up, and the public will have an opportunity to comment and see the full and final document. So I don't believe it it needs to be noticed up in any fashion at this point.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thank you. And if members of the public are watching, there might be one person out there, or they've got questions, call Councilmember Ripsis. I'm sure he'd be happy to talk with you. So, very good. Thanks, everyone. I think that's a wrap. We are adjourned.